If I could ask councillors to take their seats again, please. It's 7 o'clock. If I may call the meeting to order, please. Councillors, if I may call the meeting to order, please. We are in council chambers for our regular general committee meeting. Councillors, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as has been amended? We have amendments on our desk. Councillor Abel, thank you. Councillor Perry, thank you. Comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof, please. Seeing none, we have 3 presentations. The first one up is Anka Mihail, Manager of Engineering and Capital Delivery. Anka, welcome. Can you get it all done in 10 minutes?
I'll try. Good evening. I will speak tonight about pavement management. Yes. Sorry. Good evening. I will speak tonight about pavement management, and the agenda will include pavement management systems, pavement condition data collection and processing, road reconstruction and rehabilitation analysis, and steps for delivering a successful pavement management system. Pavement management philosophy is to apply the right treatment to the right road at the right time. Sorry, it's the first time for me here in this setting. So, that's pavement management philosophy to apply the right treatment to the right road at the right time. And we have to deal here with 2 areas. Road network level and project level. At the road network level, we have to establish a level of service, payment inventory, identification of needs, prioritization, and budgeting. At the project level, designing and implementing the right treatment, we have to deal with project design, implementation, and performance monitoring. Managing pavement assets, the goal of a good pavement management system is to address the following, to give answers to the following questions. What do we have and where is it? We have 195 center line kilometer approximately, and approximately 398 lane kilometer of roadway. What is worth? Our replacement value for the road network is 275 million. Using an average of all-in pavement and granular base of $160 per square meter. What is the condition of the road network? This is measured by the pavement quality index. The current average of the pavement quality index for the town of Aurora road network is 65. Knowing and tracking the pavement quality index allows the town to assess if the road network is being maintained or is deteriorating over time under the current funding practices. What needs to be done? We apply the pavement management philosophy, apply the right treatment to the right road at the right time. What do we need to do? a cost-benefit approach is used to identify and prioritize when we need to do maintenance and rehabilitation, and what should be done for certain various road segments throughout the town. How much does it cost, and how do we ensure a long-term affordability? We study various budget scenarios, and in order to determine whether or not current or anticipating funding is enough to maintain an acceptable level of service for the road network. As I said before, Pavement Quality Index, what we call PQI, it's developed to establish the overall condition of a pavement. It incorporates pavement roughness and the surface distresses. So we record pavement distresses on a road, the quantity, the type, the severity, and we adjust it with the roughness of the road, or what it is called a ride comfort index, and this will give us the Pavement Quality Index. This is expressed on a scale from 1 to 100, as you can see in the slide. Pavement condition versus time. Pavement management system use a cost-benefit approach to identify and prioritize maintenance and rehabilitation techniques that should be applied. And we have to notice that roads earlier in the deterioration trend are selected first in order to extend their life cycle. This way, the treatment option used earlier on a road in a fair or good condition are a lot less expensive than heavy rehabilitation or reconstruction options. So I will stay a little bit more here. If we have a road network that has PQI in a fair and good, so it's in a fair or good condition, if we use preventive maintenance and light rehabilitation technique, with less money, we can maintain the road, we can bring the road very fast and cheaper back at the start of its life cycle. $1 spent on preventive maintenance and light rehabilitation technique will save later $6 to $10 spent in heavy rehabilitation or total reconstruction cost. And this is very important because if the road network is let to depreciate, then we will move the entire network into the heavy and poor state, into the failed and poor state, where we have to inject a lot of money to maintain a road network that is still in poor condition. Pavement condition data collection is done either manual through visual observation. We use this methodology in Aurora starting in 2002. We use it in 2005 and 2010. This method is not always safe, is less accurate, and it's very time-consuming. It's very time-consuming for the road network. It's good for the any road in particular. In 2015, Aurora contracted infrastructure management services to do the road data collection using their digital vehicles. This is a method safer, much more safer, more accurate, and less time-consuming. It's more effective. Road data collected by IMS has been uploaded to the pavement management system. We purchased in 2005 Road Matrix as a pavement management system. And after we processed the data, we established that at the end of 2015, the PQI for the town road network is 67.8. You can see in the graph, in the table below, that the majority of our roads, 55.3%, are in a fair condition and 37.1% in a good condition. This puts the town network, more than 92% of the town network, 92.4%, in a good and fair condition. Pavement management philosophy. The last pavement management system we're using worse roads first policy. This means you start with the lowest PQI in a network and to go directly with road reconstruction, full depth reconstruction, the most expensive treatment option. Present systems apply the right treatment to the right road at the right time. This involves preventive maintenance, capital planning, optimization strategies. We have to look at longer term analysis, and we have to coordinate with other projects, special integrated assets with the road system, water main, sewers, storm sewers. Now, roads rehabilitation and reconstruction analysis. We looked at the roads as municipal assets and with an intrinsic value that they are very expensive, but also with an ability to deliver a cost-effective service to the public. We analyzed 4 scenarios as follows. Do nothing for the road network, use the existing budget of a 3.25 million annually. This means the average budget that we use in the previous 10-year road reconstruction. Maintain the existing network PQI of 65, which is now, and improve the existing network PQI to a PQI of 70. Scenario number 1, do nothing, demonstrates the deterioration of the existing network beyond 2017. By 2027, overall PQI would be 40, which will put the town road network from a fair state condition into a poor condition. And obviously, the roads reserve will be underutilized.
Anka, hold on just a second. I think you probably got some more, so I'm going to count it. Councillor Humphreys.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer to extend for the rest of the presentation.
Councillor Perry seconding. Comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Anka.
I'll go fast. Scenario number 2, 3.25 million annually. Based on the system, this scenario also is not recommended because it allows the road network to degrade. In 2027 will be at 55.9, and in 2035 will be at 48. So again, we'll put the road system in a poor state. Scenario number 3, PQI of 65. This was studied for 10 years and extended for additional 10 years to confirm financial stability and feasibility. The average spending for under this scenario will be 4.8 million annually for the first 10 years, and this scenario is financially feasible. Scenario number 4, we look at improving the overall PQI from 65 to 70. And the budget for this scenario will be 5.4 million. This scenario is financially feasible in the long term. This means that by beyond 2037, by 2039, we will build up the reserves. However, until then, until 2038, 2037, the road reserves will be in red, and will be a lot of pressure on the road reserves. So we don't recommend this scenario either. I included a few streets just to demonstrate what means a PQI of 65, and I have a set of pictures for a PQI of 70. Recommendation, we recommend to establish a clear standard service level for town road network based on long-term financial stability, to put a focus on road preventive maintenance and light rehabilitation techniques, opposed to the previous policy of worst first. And this will ensure financial self-sufficiency, and the town will, because the town has to maintain the road network in perpetuity. Based on available funding, we recognize that the scenario of maintaining the existing PQI of the road network to 65 is feasible. And the recommendation is that the PQI of 65 be approved as the standard service level for the town road network, and then the 10-year capital plan for road reconstruction and rehabilitation be developed to maintain this standard. And steps for delivering a successful pavement management program. First of all, establish a process, and repeat. We've started in 2002 implementing our first pavement management system. We have an established process, and we need to repeat. We have to commit to regular pavement conditions update. These have to be conducted every 3 to 4 years. We can use opportunities to join other municipalities or York Region. York Region has the safe pavement management system, road metrics, the same as us. We have to commit to regular data update. We have to look at the network definition. It changes over time. We have to look at the traffic data that changes over time. We have to update our unit costs. We have to refine our decision trees, prediction curves. We have to make pavement management a priority, and we have to communicate, educate, and engage on our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Anka. Very informative presentation. May I have a motion, please, to receive and refer to the item? Councillors Tom and Humphreys. Comments or questions for Anka, please? Just press your button there. Councillor Humphreys.
Through Mr. Mayor, and just thank you very much, Anna, for your presentation. It's very informative, and this approach to the program is a large change from our perspective in terms of quality of paving versus worse roads, you know, and going that way. Is that new for us, or have we always sort of approached it that way?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's new in the sense that the previous pavement management system was less sophisticated. It's outdated now, and it used, as I said, the previous policy deal with the worst roads first. This means you have a list of PQI of the roads. The previous system used PCI, which means Pavement Condition Index. The new system uses PQI, Pavement Quality Index. There is a relationship between them. PQI is less than the PCI because it takes into account the roughness of the pavement. Is never perfect, the riding quality of the road. So, but it's the same, calculated on the same scale from 1 to 100. So, opposed to the previous system, now we don't look only at the road reconstruction. We start with preventive maintenance. How we can keep the existing road network high. We have now it's fair. Let's keep it in the same condition, fair. For this, we have to put preventive maintenance, and we have to put light rehabilitation techniques early in the life cycle of the road. This way, for $1 spent in these techniques, we'll save $6 to $10 because a light rehabilitation technique that we can use, shave and pave, it costs $28 per square meter, when if we go to road reconstruction, it will be $125 per square meter for a local road, $160 per square meter for a collector, or 200 meters for arterial. Yonge Street will cost us $200 per square meter to repair. So it's better to keep the road network high than to let it degrade and spend a lot more money in the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate that. You really know the process, and you're very, very familiar with it, and I'm really assured. I feel really great knowing that you're behind the program and will be reviewing the roads in our town to make them, great, best quality following this process. And again, knowing that you're there and leading that is a great feeling for us and for me. So thank you very much for hard work. I know your heart is in it as well. I see you at the open houses, and your research is very, very detailed. So thank you again. Keep up the great work. We appreciate it.
Do with my stuff.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anka, for the presentation. You showed in the presentation that the town hired IMS to do a survey of the roads and provide us with, an evaluation. Would they also have data about other communities that they would be willing to share with us so that perhaps we could get sort of an industry average?
They definitely have the data where they went and collected the data. They have the data. If they are willing to share, I don't know, but it's worth a question.
Thanks, Anka. I'll save the rest of my questions for the report.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anka. All in favor of receipt? That's carried. Thank you very much. Great report. Appreciate it. Our next presentation is Mr. Elliott. 10 minutes good, Dan, or do we need to extend you too?
I will do my best. I will go fast. Presentation mouse over here. What do I need to do? Perfect. Good evening, Chair, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. I'm going to, if I can. Left side. Left side. Thank you. Thanks, Linda. The JOC project report, I was tasked with a little bit of a difficult task to delicately peel back the onion, as it were, and present you with some facts. I worked really hard to avoid commentary or judgment or opinion in my report, and I trust you can appreciate my difficult challenge. This report walks through several sections: land acquisition, budget development, construction costs, funding, debt, the sale of Scanlon, and lessons learned. And I tried to make note of all of the questions from our January discussions, and I hope I hit the nail on the head with those questions. So let's get right into here. The land acquisition, a space needs study was conducted, followed by a property search, and several options were explored. And Industrial Parkway North was very central. However, we knew at that time that it would require significant grading to be of use. There were some historical soil condition concerns in that area, and so we did those soil investigations with a third party, and there was no significant threats to the project that were found or discovered at that point. The purchase price was very favorable compared with the other options, and despite the anticipated costs, it was still favorable despite the anticipated costs of earthworks and servicing. And so we went ahead and purchased the land. Purchase price was $4 million with some closing costs. And we believe that the purchase price was about $1.1 to $2.2 million below market, probably because of the grading and the conditions there. And the funding was approved, and those are the three funding sources for the rest of the project in the same proportions. Then we got to the construction budget. So first, buy the land, let's get that behind us. Let's get on with the construction. The facility construction budgets develop over time. They start with an estimate. Somebody drops something in the 10-year capital plan. We've got a number in our 10-year capital plan now for a new community center. That's an estimate, a very early estimate. Then we get closer to the date, and we start moving that to a conceptual estimate, get the project on the budget books and get some funding. Then we go to block plan design and get an estimate there, then a design progress estimate. Sometimes after the architect is hired, you get a 30% design estimate, and then 60 and 90, and then 100%. Then you go to tender, and when you finally award the contract, you can finalize the budget. And so it's important to understand that the budget is a moving target. And some people have challenges with that. How can you have a budget that's a moving target? Well, it moves until you decide what to build. And then the budget generally is set. So the construction budget was set by council in January of 2014 at $20,579,000. And in August, the construction tender closed, and the budget was, the construction budget, I'll use the two different words, the construction budget was established in the staff report a little bit less. The $194,000 less was not adjusted by council, it was not returned to source. So council approved a higher budget than what staff imposed on themselves in that report. The budget and construction tender included the anticipated earthworks and site servicing works required. And the details of that budget are on page 5 of 25, and there's some breakdown there with respect to servicing and earthworks. You'll see in that budget, though, in response to former Councillor Gallo's question, there was no provision for contribution to the Public Art Reserve in that budget. That budget was very difficult to bring forward to Council, as some members are aware. There was a lot of discussion and concern about the budget in the first place, but it did get approved, and we went forward. The construction budget did include a contingency amount of $1,853,000, and going forward, the staff reported on that budget number, not the approved funding budget, the slightly larger amount. The construction cost details. From the outset, this budget may have been constrained right from the outset. I'm not sure if the space needs in the block plan studies, sort of the pre-construction work was included and considered by staff when the budget was established for the construction phase. Further, there was no resources allocated for the project management, and shortly after the project got underway, we hired a project manager. And so that ate into our contingency accounts. There was, despite our concerns and our knowledge and our expectations for site servicing and grading that was already in the tender specification documents, there were indeed some unforeseen soils and grading issues that resulted in change order costs, which further shortened our contingency amount. And then as the project came closer and closer to completion, the focus on the budget required curtailment of some project elements so that we could open the facility on budget and on time without having to come back to Council and ask for more money. So the construction cost details are in your report in page 2, or attachment 2. I attempted to take the information that my former colleague had set out for you in his report. I recast them a little bit, tried to group them by spend, and so the top portion all speaks to BUTCON, and then the architect and the project manager, and then all of the other costs. The project budget account, it was actually overspent by $103,000. I think that was losing track of what the actual running balance was and what were the commitments being made to vendors as the project was coming close to opening. And then due to the removal of some elements on the previous page, we took some stuff out so that we could complete and open the facility with the money that was on hand. If we go back and now put those things back in place, like the second layer of asphalt on the parking lot, it's going to cost us almost $1.5 million in additional costs. And factoring that in, we're about 7.7% over the construction budget. So my report speaks to 3 specific recommendations. One is to fund the $103,000 that's overspent. We normally would do that in a capital close report, but I knew that I was doing this report, and so we're going to do it through here. We're going to close the capital project if we could, and suggest that we include the final items for completion in future budgets, as we've noted in this report. One other item that came up in the open forum section was, is there a provision for public art in this budget? And there is not. And so this would be an opportune time, if Council chose to do so, to ask me to make a contribution to the Public Art Reserve, fund it in like format as the rest of the project. I'd be happy to do that. 1% is about $205,000, and so that might be your number in a recommendation. The funding sources, they were consistent right from the final design. The R&R component, which is a repair and replacement, so the replacement of the existing facility, when you're building a new one and going to get rid of the old one, I can't say that all of the new is related to growth. Some of it's going to be to the existing community. So that's the repair and replacement component. So we funded that from the sale of lands reserve. And then the growth component to serve recent past growth and future expected growth is all coming from development charges, both in the roads section and in the park section. And they're all in proportions in the development charge background study. At the time of the outset of this project, we didn't have the funds on hand. which is not unusual for a project of this magnitude. And so we approved interim construction financing through Infrastructure Ontario, which was the lowest rate available to us. I've got some graphs in attachment 2 that show the budget and the funding sources as well as the current state of the funding. You'll see that the sale of lands contributions are 100%. So we've funded all of that because we have been able to sell a number of parcels over at Leslie Street that have provided the funding availability. And so that was used instead of debt. And the DCs are anticipated to be collected over the next 13 years. And so we'll retire the debt slowly as we collect those DCs. I just got a little off my speaking notes. So the costs of the financing are being funded by the development charges because they're also included in the development charge background study. So the project was, as was the debt financing in the background study, and so we can fund it with development charges. So this interim construction line of credit financing was approved to be used to fund the project. Subject
Mr. Elliott, I'm just going to hold you for a second. Councillor Thompson? Motion to extend? Councillor Humphrey, second. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
I'll try to wind it up fast. The interim financing was approved to be used to fund the project, and we were going to continue to collect this. So the current line of credit is sitting at just over $6 million with a 1.5% annual interest rate. It changes monthly. It's like a fully open variable rate mortgage at this point. The growth and development charges forecast anticipates payment in 13 to 14 years. So far, we've paid about $206,000 in interest. And if we do it over 13 and a half years instead of 10 like I used in the report, it's nearly $1.2 million using a 2.64% interest rate. So again, all of the interest costs are funded by development charges. And again, emphasize that there's no net cost to the tax-funded operating budget for construction of this project or its financing. Yes, there is operating impacts for operating costs, but not for that. The sale of Scanlon properties, the details are in your report. I'm going to skip over this a little bit, but the sale of Scanlon has to be seen as a separate transaction. The sale of Scanlon will recharge the sale of lands reserve, which was previously used to fund this project. It was not a direct funding source. Call it an indirect funding source. And most importantly, I think it's fair that staff present some options or some lessons that we've learned from this project, and we've had discussions around the ELT table and throughout the organization in different places. We're strongly recommending, and we're well underway, in fact we were working on this today, about standardizing a project management framework for use in the town by staff. We're recommending improved internal financial reporting and project management skills, and that's one of my goals for this year, is to improve that across the organization. Assign a financial analyst to the project manager to assist in monitoring and reporting of costs and budgets of major projects like this. Having a specialist who can handle the dollars and cents and understand what's in the GL and what's not in the GL and so on will go a long way to preventing things like the $103,000 overspend. We need a greater clarity in the role of any steering or monitoring committee. I know that there was some concerns about that. Were there minutes of that committee? My understanding is there were not minutes. However, the reports that were seen by that committee were in fact laid on the general committee agenda immediately after. We need improved clarity of the project scope, what's in, what's out, and a lot of transparency around that prior to construction tender. I think the ball got dropped in that area on this project as well. We need improved understanding as I walked through the evolution of the estimates and budgets through the tender award. There's some misunderstandings of how those evolve over time, and I think it's important to keep emphasizing that it's a moving target until we set the tender. There's clear separation of costs and budgets for all activities prior to the commencement of construction. Sort of take a clean break just before construction so that you can monitor costs from that point forward from what happened prior. And so those are some of the lessons learned that we've come up with. Mr. Chair, I conclude my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. First, may I please have a motion to receive and refer to item R2, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Perry, thank you. I've got Councillor Abel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just one question, and I'll save the rest for the item. But you have on construction cost details due to removal of some elements cost to complete the project as originally planned. They were removed, but you at a cost of $1,493,000, and then you upped that to $1,596,000. Can you tell us what those elements were? I'm looking through the report, I don't see it.
Mr. Elliott?
I'm not sure why those two numbers are different. They should have been the same. I apologize for that. On the bottom of Schedule 2, in the report, Schedule Attachment 1, the bottom section, it says costs required to complete the project not in budget. Do you see this section? It's on consecutive 13 of 25.
13.
13 of 25. Two-thirds of the way down the page, there's a section, a header, costs required to complete the project not in the budget. That's the breakdown.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Dan, I apologize if I missed it. I know you did address the question that was raised with regards to the public art and the 1%. But with regards to any sort of grant funding that we pursued, one was mentioned the Green Municipal Fund or anything else. Can you just touch on what, if any, applications the town sought to help finance this project and whether or not we were successful?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the town, I believe, we filed two applications, one to the Green Municipal Fund and one to a Federal Infrastructure Fund, and neither were successful, unfortunately.
Were there any details included why we were not successful? I know this.
I'd have to look them up. I'd really have to look them up, but usually there's no real explanation given other than you didn't make the cut.
That's fine. I'm sure it was just a very nice letter saying thank you for applying. Thanks. That's all the questions I have for the presentation.
Any other questions? All in favor of receive and refer then? Contrary? That's carried. Thank you. And our last presentation is Laurie Mueller and Aaron Hamilton, the Sport Aurora Sport Plan Progress Report. Ladies.
You got the clicker? Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mayor Daw, members of council, staff, and guests. I want to thank you once again for your time tonight and for our opportunity to readdress our next stages of completion on the Aurora Sport Plan. Aaron Hamilton and I will take you through the next two deliverables of the year one, and I thank you for reviewing those documents sent to you prior to tonight. In your packages, you will see two documents, one being the access and needs of support persons with disability, and the second identifying the barriers to participation and the mechanisms to increase participation for residents of low-income backgrounds. Again, much work still needs to be done in year two, and with our strong partnership, Sport Aurora will prepare for year two. Now I reintroduce Aaron Hamilton.
Good evening. Sorry. Oh, use this one? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. So as Laurie outlined, we're going to address two elements within the sport plan and provide you with an update on what's taken place since we last were here in front of you to provide an update, the findings as a result of the work that we've done, and where we need to go from here. So that will be our focus of our presentation tonight, with the first being convening a meeting of agencies supporting persons with a disability to better understand their needs to be included in sport in Aurora. So since our last presentation to Council, a number of steps have been taken. So first we've hosted 2 committee meetings, February 23rd and March 9th. And through those meetings, there was a variety of components discussed. We had Vicki Keith, who is a marathon swimmer and runs a very successful swim program called Kingston Y Penguins, to share the best practices as a result of launching their program in Kingston, their hurdles, what was successful, why it was successful, so that we had a baseline to look at as we continued to address the needs. We looked at a variety of demographic information related to persons with a disability within Aurora, within Ontario, addressing current programs that exist, what were the successes, why they were successful, and what were the challenges associated with those programs. And then from there, and through those various discussions, we identified barriers to participation. So that was one of the key findings that came away from those 2 meetings. We had a number of barriers that I'm going to talk about next, and then what were the needs to address those barriers, and what are the priority levels associated with each of those barriers. As a result of the 2 meetings, we developed the initial report, which was in your package, and is more extensive than what we'll go into tonight, but I'm going to touch on some of the key elements within the report that you received. In terms of committee composition, I'm not going to go through all the names, but it gives you a sense as to the various agencies that we engaged to participate in the meetings that took place to talk about the elements that I just outlined in the previous slide. So from clubs of Sport Aurora that service persons with a disability, school boards, members from the Accessibility Advisory Committee, Autism Ontario, so a wide range of organizations and agencies within Aurora that contributed to the report. From there, within the meeting, we identified 10 major barriers associated with participation in sport and recreation in Aurora. From attitude and willingness, so that really looks at sort of current programs that exist, clubs, sport programs, recreation programs, and their willingness and attitude to sort of look at how they can provide opportunities and engage and adapt programs. And that leads a bit into sort of a comfort level and unsure sort of approach to how they might be able to adapt, and that leads to some of our other barriers. Awareness, communication, how do we effectively reach those within Aurora that have a disability and make them aware of opportunities that do exist? Do we have the right communication tools in place? Lack of programs, and I'll touch in my next slide a bit around sort of some major organizations that do provide opportunities, but the lack of opportunities that do exist. Policy barriers, really looking at what policies exist within the town. Can there be a review that's done and maybe some minor adjustments to policies that could increase participation? Transportation, getting to and from programs. A lot of persons with a disability depend on family members, depend on local public transportation to get there, and that can be a challenge. The cost associated with participating, some of the key elements within there, the number of people that register for a program for persons with a disability is lower in numbers than able-bodied participation, just due to the population size. But in many cases, they're paying the same price for facility space, so the cost to participate can be greater. Lack of support staff, a lot depend on their families, and not all cases are their families available, so the necessary support staff to be able to participate. Leadership and volunteers, that sort of key person in the community that will run with programs, develop programs, and having sufficient volunteers. Resources, guide, support, and educate. That leads back into our point about attitude and willingness and sort of a comfort level associated with understanding the needs of persons with a disability and the ability to adapt. So how do we provide the necessary resources for people to be able to do so? And there's a lack of resources available. And then the last piece is facilities, accessible and available to them. So there was some comments around the table of the committee that overall they felt that Aurora was moving in a really great direction in terms of accessibility. There were maybe some adjustments, but they really acknowledged the work that had been done within Aurora on that regard. But then available facilities, we recognize that there are key facilities that are booked up, and so how do we make sure they're available? From there, other key findings, best practices, some key things, collaboration, leadership, environment, some of the 4 main programs, Town of Aurora, Special Olympics Ontario Aurora, Aurora Youth Soccer Club, and Autism Ontario York Region. Additional programs, there are additional programs surrounding in the GTA, but again, how do we access those and transportation? Some key programs, sailing, horseback riding, skiing, snowboarding were the major ones that were available and most popular. And then we also identify classification of disability groups being difficult in terms of the range and magnitude of the different disability groups that exist. Where do we go from here in this task? We're doing a presentation tomorrow to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And then from here, we're going to convene another meeting to really prioritize the 10 key barriers and which one is ranked number one. What do we need to address first? And then really dig a bit deeper into the needs in regards to persons with a disability. So that's where we are in that component. I'm going to pass it back over to Lori to speak to low-income families.
So the next one, next document we prepared for you is the development of a recreation and sport access policy that identifies barriers to participation and addresses mechanisms that can increase participation and full access for residents of low-income backgrounds. So on March the 6th, we had a initial meeting with the committee, and on March 15th, we met with a group of parents that really appreciated having the chance to get together and identify their barriers and some of the problems they have accessing information on where they can address some of their initial barriers and thoughts. So they appreciated being able to come in and have a discussion about that. Some key discussion points were some of the demographic information and current programs that have successes and challenges, and they got to participate in that discussion. Barriers to participation and the needs to address those barriers. And then eventually we're going to touch on the priority level and what comes first. Initial report was created to present the findings, and a guide to the next steps are in process. That's the composition of the initial meeting that we had in March, and you can see from the list there, I tried to get as many of the people who access, who identify low-income backgrounds, such as Canadian Tire, Jumpstart, the Food Pantry, Welcoming Arms, Big Brothers Big Sisters, York Region, Public Health, the All Kids Can Play program, and Sport Aurora. Then there were 8 parents who participated in the next meeting. Some key findings were the attitude and stigma behind the definition of low income, some systemic barriers, policy barriers that they found were difficult in this area. They got to address some of the transportation barriers, lack of support staff and leadership. Technology was a big one. Not all of them have access to internet. So going back to the grassroots of having something tangible for them to have in their hands would really help them. And what would the cost be to eliminate those barriers? Some recommendations that came out of those meetings were the need for a more personal approach.
Are you going to need much more time?
I'm trying.
Humphreys, Tom, all in favor? Contrary, please.
Thank you. Some House League programs that are more expensive outside this area. Let me rephrase that. They found that programs within this area were a little bit more expensive than the programs outside of this area, which was interesting. So we need some research into why that's happening. And they found that the funding pool for exceptional athletes wasn't available. So what happens to their athletes once they're at a certain point and they want to go on? So they found that funding usually stops from ages 18 and higher. Some recommendations that we looked into. I don't know if many of you remember the Purple Book that used to exist in Aurora? No. Nobody's heard of the Purple Book yet. They did. Lack of funding opportunity awareness, so getting an outreach program so that information is readily available for them, more easily accessible. There was a recommendation on equipment drives here at the town. An equipment where some people can drop off equipment and there'd be a swap where they can access equipment at no cost to them. And perhaps the research and the development of a low-income standard here in this town. Where do we go from here? We need to review the needs identified and conduct further research to provide additional guiding information and the exploration on the mechanisms key to reducing these barriers for participation in sport and recreation. Other sport plan updates, we're in the process of the sport policy recommendations have been developed. A marketing advisory committee has been formed and research on successful large municipal communication strategies is being conducted, and a broad-based marketing strategy is underway. Thank you. I'd like to conclude by saying Sport Aurora would once again like to thank the town of Aurora. The trust you've put in Sport Aurora to help build a strong and sustainable foundation for the sport in this community is much appreciated. With the help of yourself and Mr. Downey, this wouldn't be possible. I'm proud of Sport Aurora, and I'm proud of all the work we've done, and to be able to present to you everything we've done in year one. I know we will come together to make a community a healthier place to live, work, and play. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie, and thank you, Aaron. May I first have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Humphrey, Councillor Kim, comments or questions? I go to Councillor Humphreys.
Through Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. And I'm just so excited about the progress you've made already in moving forward with this completely inclusive program for our community. It is such the right thing to do. And I'm just excited about the outcomes. I know you're meeting accessibility. I'll see you there tomorrow. And I really believe this will truly be an example of almost a template of how other communities can move forward to do, enable sports and activities to be a totally inclusive initiative. So really want to thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to, once you meet again with the respective teams, and coming back to show us somewhat of a program, guidelines as to where we continue to go on and build from there. So thank you very much for your dedication and support for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Tom, Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mayor Daw, and thank you for coming out and for making the presentation. On the last page, or second to last page of your presentation, it talked about marketing advisory committee being formed, research successful, and a broad-based marketing strategy. Is that for the sport plan, or is that for the town? Like, I don't remember that being part of the mandate, so I just wanted to know if you could expand on what that means, what the marketing advisory committee is doing, and what the marketing strategy is.
The marketing strategy was an element within the sport plan within year one, and it was really looking at how sport could collaborate as a whole and work together in a method to build more awareness and knowledge around key messages, consistent messages around sport in Aurora. So the goal was to bring together representatives from different sort of sectors, nonprofit, private, municipal, government organizations, to talk about marketing within, provide advice and guidance for sport in Aurora to be able to move forward to develop effective communication methods. So there's been meetings that have taken place with communications department here at the town, and then bringing together some representatives from the community. Councillor?
Thank you. So this is more about communication about sport in Aurora and not about corporate sponsorships with the town facilities. Then it's not sports marketing. It's marketing of the sports organizations in town to.
Exactly. Yeah, not specific to sponsorship of town facilities. It is more about sport and participation and messaging.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for presenting. I am encouraged greatly by the inclusiveness. I did attend one of your meetings with Vicki Keith, and was very encouraged with the success that she has run in Kingston. And so it just shows your collaboration in getting the best practices. And for those that were like me, Vicki Keith rings a bell. She swam across Lake Ontario to raise awareness for ability challenged people, and has run that into a fantastic, successful program in Kingston. So it's one I think we can realize here. And I'm sure you'll see with the vision and the organization, Sport Aurora will attain that. So it's a very big part of the whole plan, and you put a lot of work into it. And I think Vicki Keith swam both ways in one time. Just an absolute amazing person.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Laurie and Aaron, for coming out and giving us an update on the sports plan. It's much appreciated. Just one question. I think one of the more underrated programs that Sport Aurora offers is the All Kids Can Play. And since we are talking about sport participation, perhaps you could just take a moment just to sort of speak to, how it services the community and how maybe businesses or others could support the program more.
Being the administrator of that program, the All Kids Can Play program is accessible to anyone in Aurora. And a part of our outreach is to make it more accessible to these families to be able to approach us for funding. I think that a part of this marketing strategy is how do we make these types of programs more accessible to these families, and I think that outreach is a large part of that marketing strategy that needs to be addressed, so that it doesn't become a barrier, and that their knowledge is greater and the access is greater. I think that also a part of that marketing strategy, which is going to be huge, is what successes have happened in other municipalities and how can we apply them to the strategy that pertains to Aurora. And if that strategy has got an outreach program and what works, then we can apply it here. Because I think that a lot of it has to do with knowledge. Is how can we, without being evasive, how can we touch these families and get it to them so that they're comfortable coming to us? So we don't want anything to create barriers for them to do that. And I think that another part of the sport plan in year 2 has to touch on sponsorship. That is a part, a funding strategy is a part of the sport plan. And again, programs like the All Kids Can Play that only solely relies on donations from sponsors, like sponsorship and donations, and clubs who run fundraising and donate to the All Kids Can Play program, that's how the program's going to succeed.
Councillor?
Thank you. So from what I'm hearing, it's really part of the awareness campaign, using the marketing committee to help, raise awareness within the community, both for those that need the program as well as those who would like to support it. So that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, ladies, for coming. Regarding, just to add to the questions on the All Kids Can Play, what's the status of the funding levels? Is there more applicants than there are funding for, or is there still sufficient funding and lack of applicants? And based on your previous response, it seems like the latter, but if you can clarify.
That's a hard one and not a hard one to answer. The funding is in place to be able to provide the funds for these families. We're not quite sure if the funds are still still in Sport Aurora because of the lack of awareness or the lack of outreach. We encourage at our AGM, when we meet the sport organizations, we encourage them to please be in touch with their families, put it on your website. The brochures are accessible to families. Applicants have increased to date, they have. More families are accessing the All Kids Can Play program through our sport organizations, and that's just because the organizations are doing a great job providing the information outwards. So, I'm not ever going to say that there's funds, that we're maxed out. That funding pool is always in need of donations, and we always want to be in a position where we can not turn anybody away.
With the recent federal budget taking away sport and cultural credits, has that been discussed at Sport Aurora regards to any kind of impact on local families? Okay.
probably now. No, we haven't addressed that, because that's a barrier. That's, no, that hasn't come down to Sport Aurora yet, but probably definitely something that Sport Aurora should look into, how we cross that bridge when that comes down the pipeline.
Contrary? That is carried. Thank you very much. Ladies, thank you very much for coming out. Do appreciate it. Council, we'll move to delegations. First up, Mr. Jamie Cole with the Aurora King Baseball Association with respect to facilities. So, Mr. Cole, if you could introduce yourself and give us your address. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Sorry, what was this?
If you could introduce yourself, give us your address, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm Jamie Cole from 31 Peterman Street in Aurora. I'd like to just start off by thanking Mayor, Council, everyone else for taking some time to listen to some of the concerns of the Aurora King Baseball Association, and I would also like to take a quick second in front of all of our town's leadership to point out our Mosquito AA baseball champions from last year. They won the Ontario Championship, so that's a picture of them right after they won last year, so congratulations to them. So my name is Jamie Cole, and I'm the president of the Aurora King Baseball Association, and although this is my first season as president, I've been with the organization volunteering one way or another for 8 years now. As with all organizations, we have many challenges, but the biggest challenge facing us right now is diamond capacity. Oh, thank you. The support, dedication, and talent level have never been higher within Aurora. We've had a surge in our registration over the past couple of years, and the influx has been from a combination of a growing market, the town's growing, as well as the success of the Toronto Blue Jays. This momentum is great and something that we want to make sure that we continue and build upon. We want to be able to give the families of the community an opportunity to enjoy the sport and ensure that that program that we put together meets or even better exceeds the expectations that they have. We've never had a more dedicated volunteer or coaching group than we have today, and we just need to make sure that we have places to play. In the town of Aurora, we currently are using the same number of diamonds that we were using 8 years ago when my son started playing T-ball. The organization has been growing ever since and is now more than double the size it was just not too long ago. You can see from the chart on the screen the growth that we've seen over the past 2 seasons. In senior rookie and Mosquito, which are your 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, we're looking at having 14 teams this season with 13 kids per team. At 3 of the levels, Mosquito, Pee-wee, and Bantam that are up on the screen, those numbers for 2017 are actually higher than what they show because this year we've taken our select program, which traditionally plays house league ball, and taken them out, and they're just dedicated to their select team in order to create more capacity within the house league. These numbers also do not include our rep program. Our rep program has basically been constant over the past decade plus, not because there isn't a desire and talent, there certainly is, but because we don't have the diamond time to add more teams. We've done many things to try and adjust to what diamond time is available. So just to name a few, we've increased team sizes within House League. So we do have 13 kids per team now, more than ideal. Obviously, we have kids sitting on the bench when we'd rather have them in the game. We have increased the number of buys that teams have. So that would mean a whole team sitting out at a night, or in some cases, more than one team. We've doubled up and shortened practices, so what used to be one team's practice time is cut in half and added and put together to be 2 teams. We've had teams playing and practicing on diamonds that aren't appropriate for their age level, so you can't put the bases at the proper distance. We have to move them in a little bit. We have kids in Bantam, age 14 and 15, and really depending on when their birthday is, in some cases 13, where 25% of their games begin at 9 p.m. We've started scheduling games on Sunday nights, so taking away some weekend time, some family time from the groups that want to enjoy the game. And most sadly last year, and will probably happen again this year, is that we've actually had to turn some kids away from baseball. So we've been doing everything we can. One thing that we've just done this week is we were able to secure a diamond in Newmarket at the York Region Police Association, where they have a set of 3 diamonds, and they've been able to give us 1 diamond that we'll be using for 3 nights of the week, every week. So this is some help to our organization, but those diamonds come at a higher cost as well. If we had more diamonds, we'd be able to provide a better experience for the kids and parents, which keep families active in the community and enjoying the game of baseball. We are at least 2 diamonds short in Aurora, probably more. Diamonds without mounds that could be used for kids age 15 and younger, similar to the one at Optimus Park, if you're familiar with that, or the Leisure Complex diamonds. Even a single diamond at this point would make a huge difference.
Mr. Cole, can you ask you to wrap it up, please?
Yep, absolutely. I realize that land and funding are always at a premium, and decisions on how to use them are not and should not be taken lightly. My goal here today was to make you aware of just how short we are on diamonds, so that when you're looking forward at the plans of the town and debating on how to invest in the town, that you give the idea of new ball diamonds its due. For a ball diamond, once you have the land, we just need an infield, a backstop, and 2 benches, and we're ready to play. I've done a tiny bit of research on it, and you can get a basic diamond for around $150,000 after you have the land, which is obviously a key piece to it. And really all we need are simple type diamonds. So again, thank you very much for listening to my concerns and Aurora Baseball's concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. May I first have a motion to receive and refer to staff? Councilors Humphreys and Tom. Councilor Humphreys, Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for coming forward this evening and making us aware of the need, obviously, and sort of very sad to hear you have to turn away individuals who want to play. And on the other hand, it's exciting that it's getting bigger and better for you and the organization. May I make a comment here, Mr. Mayor, that we have this referred to staff?
I did. That's the motion.
Oh, yeah, perfect, done. So I just want to thank you very much, and looking forward to hearing what staff have to say between yourselves to work through whatever we can do to hopefully provide more of that diamond space you need. Thanks.
Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Cole. Jamie, could you remind me when you guys merged with King to become the Aurora King Baseball Association? 3 seasons. And what's your breakdown between Aurora residents and King residents? Do you know how many come from each municipality?
Approximately. So about 25% come from the King, Nobleton, Schaumburg region. So then the majority of the rest come from Aurora. Then there's always the odd, the few kids who come from Newmarket, Oak Ridges, some things like that.
And how many diamonds do you have in Aurora, and how many diamonds do you have in King that you utilize?
Top of my head, I couldn't tell you that, but we do use a larger percentage of the diamonds in King compared to the number of registration, those that are registered. So we are utilizing the King diamonds to help support the Aurora program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Jamie, for coming out tonight and providing us with that information. Just really around the rise in popularity and your increase in numbers, can you attribute it to any one particular thing besides the Blue Jays being so good?
Josh Donaldson.
I think it's 2 things. It's the growth of the market as well. There's no doubt the Blue Jays are having a big impact. I didn't have kids in '93. It was one myself. But I understand there was a similar surge in the sport back then. Our problem, our challenge, and it is a good problem to have and a good challenge to have, when we speak to the other organizations, Newmarket, Richmond Hill, everybody else, they're all seeing the same problems or the same challenges. So the one thing that we want to make sure is that we can retain as many of these kids as possible. And to do that, it's to be able to put on a good program for them.
Councilor.
And I appreciate that. And just so I'm clear, you think in your estimation that in order to meet the demand that you have, you need at least 2 diamonds. Granted, 1 would help, I understand that, but you feel that 2 diamonds would not only address the current issue, but also the future?
Yes. I think it would put us at capacity, as we would still be at capacity. If we put 2 more diamonds in Aurora today, I would use them every night of the week. So they would get fully used right now. And then going forward, we would hopefully use them more because we actually have opportunity again. We have, you saw our OBA champions, they're at the highest level this year. There's a whole group of kids on that age that are disappointed that they can't play in our rep program and represent the town across the province. And we would be able to add even more teams in that program as well.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Jamie, for presenting or delegating. Part of the process is that we're now aware of it. We can refer this to staff, and we can probably see this in our growth plans and budgets and start addressing it. So the awareness of that coming forward is critical and key. And I love the overview. When I first moved to Aurora, baseball being my passion, I enrolled my kids in baseball right off the bat. It was mixed. Girls and boys in a league, and it was just great fun. Your league is strictly hardball?
Yes, sir.
And along with your league, you share those facilities with adult recreational girls and other leagues that are formed?
Yes, sir.
So we have to...
You know that they're having the same issues that we are. There are groups that I would certainly like to meet it, but I know the men's leagues, they're always looking to grow, and I know actually the Aurora Diggers, the girls softball within town, they contacted me to see if we had any spare diamond time that we could send their way, something we've been doing with other leagues, men leagues, and so on as well. So I think at this point, everybody's looking for diamonds. So if there were more diamonds, not only would it be us that would be stepping up right away to use them, there would be other leagues and groups as well.
I thank you very much for sharing that information. It's good that we know that it's a very active baseball community that excels. And congratulations to your volunteers and everyone else that is committed to the program.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make you aware, Mr. Cole, that my son's been, he's been playing baseball, the AKBA, for the last, 3 years or so, and I'm certainly aware of the challenges, and I'll certainly do my best to have some real options in subsequent years. And I know driving to King City and Nobleton every week is not a desirable thing, and so we'll put some more effort into seeing what we can do about the baseball diamonds, and I hope that I know baseball is cyclical, and I hope that the Jays are not on a downswing and that we build these diamonds and popularity wanes. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there's no more comments, all in favor of receipt and refer. Opposed? Thank you very much for coming, sir. We do appreciate it. Next delegate is Jamie McDonald, Music Aurora, which is item R9. Mr. McDonald, if you could give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, it's Jamie McDonald, 63 Sussman Avenue. Okay, good evening, Mayor Daw, honorable members of council, and town staff. Many of you know me as the founder and artistic director of the Aurora Winter Blues Festival. I'm here this evening, however, in my new capacity as president of Music Aurora. Just click that. Oops. How do I go back? There we go. Music Aurora is just York Region's newest community-based not-for-profit organization focused solely on all things music. Took us some time. This has been in the works for about 2 years, but we're very happy to have this launched. And before I get into aspects of the general committee report prepared by staff on Music Aurora tied to the Canada 150 celebrations, just want to take this opportunity to get some background on Music Aurora. Formally incorporated December 2016, formally launched January of 2017. I believe many of you participated in our pop-up industrial concert on Industrial Way. We've got a strong executive and board in place with skills in event management, promotion and advertising, marketing, and fund development. We've got formal constitution in place. We've established partnerships in the community through our programming of 6 years of the Aurora Winter Blues Festival. We've produced program the End of Summer Blues Concert in the Park 2015, the Tragedy Hip National Celebration broadcast in 2016, and a number of youth challenge of the bands as well. We're a membership-based organization. Music Aurora is structured similar to the successful model of Sport Aurora. I'd like to thank Ron Weiss for his insights and consultation with our board to get this off the ground. It was invaluable. Ooh, sorry. Why is that not going forward? Okay. Our mandate, in a nutshell here, front and center is festival management, drawing on our years of experience. Live event programming. We are intending on bringing more live programming to the town of Aurora, leveraging town facilities through the partnerships we have. Focusing on advocacy, education, and recognition. That's going to be core to us, as you've seen with Sport Aurora. Really, we'll have a larger voice and be able to go after a number of funding programs, either at the municipal, provincial, and federal level as well. Event musician brokering. We're already getting calls from the local community, hospitals, senior centers, house concerts wanting us to help out. So this is all adding for a very dynamic music scene in this town. And also then finally is a digital music hub. This is key. Our tagline there, where music connects. This is a one-stop digital hub where everyone or anyone can find out anything about music happening in this town, across all the town facilities, private facilities, in the schools, and even discussion points for musicians and those in the industry as well too. I keep wanting to go back. Music Aurora alignment. Key to us, we took a lot of time aligning our mandate and our purpose to align with the town strategies. As you're all well aware of, and a number of you have crafted, the arts and culture strategy, music strategy, and the tourism plan. Our aim is to help execute and deliver on all these strategies going forward. We're working with local business and community groups. I'd like to thank Javikana and the Chamber of Commerce. We were in there last week presenting to the board. Great support, and they're also working with us to position greater buy-in and support of the local business community for the upcoming summer festival. Also working with a number of community groups and also Sport Aurora. So we're working both with the Chamber and Sport Aurora on the Activate Aurora and the Open Streets tied to the Street Festival. So we're very excited to be working with that. The bottom line really is economic development. As you're well aware, there's several studies that link a dynamic arts and cultural scene to a robust economic development. That's really the bottom line here, is not only a diversity and robust music scene, but how does this add to the bottom line of growth of the economic development in this town. And finally, this is core for us, drawing on the strengths of 6 years of running the Aurora Winter Blues Festival, which has grown from a one-day event to a whole month event. We're looking to draw on the strength, the bench strength we have, and the core competencies in launching the new Aurora Summer Music Festival this year. Starting out with a one-day festival, but intending on growing that to a three-day event going forward.
Mr. McDonald, if you could wrap it up, please.
Okay. So I'll get to the ask. I guess I'm just jumping. So as we mentioned last time in November, when we were before the committee asking for, the council with the permits, just an update. Again, we are a free event, no cost for residents or visitors for this festival. We're very family focused, young gen focused. This ties into the Canada 150, one of the key pillars, which is youth focused. We're aligned with the Aurora Canada 150 celebrations, having presented to the ad hoc committee and getting their support. We're part of the York Regional Festival Alliance Canada 150 Festival Trail. Active participation in the community partners, really positioning this as a new arts and cultural event. And finally, treating this as a legacy event for future benefit of the town. And this is another pillar of the Canada 150, which is really tied to a gift of time, as we saw back in 1967 with the centennial year there. So finally, our ask of the town in line with the...
Quickly, please.
Yes. is support of the Aurora Summer Music Festival as a Canada 150 Talent-sponsored event. Approval of the ask of $16,000 as supported by the town's Canada 150 Ad Hoc Committee. That was at a meeting last night where we had full support. But also support in that same report of town staff offer of communication and parks and recreational cultural services. In any event, we have a very passionate and motivated team of community volunteers behind this event who are wanting nothing more than to secure a successful festival, music festival, for years to come in the town of Aurora. Your support of the Aurora Summer Music Festival as part of the town's Canada 150 celebrations and support of the financial ask would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. May I have a motion, please, to receive and refer to item R9? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Kim. Comments or questions from Mr. McDonald, please? Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for presenting. And I think music is a wonderful thing. Music does a lot of, makes people happy, makes people want to drink, make people connect. Has Music Aurora considered, what is there a saturation level in terms of special events, music-focused events, and the size of the town and the composition of the town?
At that, we've actually gone out and done some road work, meeting with other festival directors and the success. For example, the Orangeville Music Festival, a town of roughly 30,000, brings in over 60,000 people, visitors to that. So not saturated, it grows every year as well. If anything, there is an uptake on festivals, whether it be music or other arts and culture. Many towns and municipalities, that's a focus now in line with their tourism plan and economic development. Within this town, no, I don't believe there's a void, I think. If we look around us, King City has launched their beer and food truck, but there's a music component to that. It's very well received and it's growing year over year. We specifically are going after a younger demographics with this festival to ensure the sustainability of this festival. Our Winter Blues Festival, yeah, we get all the gray hairs, the 50 plus out to that. We're going after 25 to young 40-year-olds, so what I call the young gens. And that's where research, through my role with the Toronto Blues Society as Vice President, the research we've done, that's the uptake, that's where we need to focus.
Councillor?
Yes, and I think, with all events, the challenge is always, how do you engage the newer residents that come into town, and especially it's not just the demographics, but the ethnic variability as well. And so, does Music Aurora have any plans or schedule in terms of expanding the music to different types of music that would gain some more traction with the newer segments of the population?
The Summer Festival is a multi-genre festival as well, aimed at a different demographic. Part of our mandate, the live programming, we'll be working with community organizations and augmenting what's available in the town, but really bringing a different type of music experience to the town, looking at the various diverse makeup of the town as well.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. And just a couple questions. So this is just so we had one music festival last summer. I think it was the launch. Is this the same entity or group that have come together?
We're treating this as it's new organizing committee. It's rolled under Music Aurora, which didn't exist a year ago. We're focusing a different name around this. Different demographics we're going after. As I mentioned earlier, we're going after younger demographics. It's going to be a different vibe, different location. Leveraging the beautiful town park. That's a perfect spot right in the core of the community.
Through Mr. Mayor, and the proven yourself and Mrs. Smith obviously proven with the Blues Fest, the great. I'm not worried at all in terms of the incredible talent we brought in and for our town to enjoy, for sure. And just and it looks like, you've got a budgetary ask of $16,000 plus a waiver of the fees. And, for me personally, I'd love to support that. The problem is there's other community groups who are holding events as well, and it becomes difficult, where do you draw the line or where you don't. So I think we have to have a discussion as a council to figure that out. But it's absolutely not regardless of how it turns out, it's not a slight on this committee. You guys are I know it'll be beautiful. We need this type of event to occur in our town, and to add to the 150 would be, absolutely incredible. And I probably save it for our item of discussion, but during your discussions last night, or was it last night, the ad hoc committee? Sorry, I didn't. Was there any discussion in terms of including this within the existing budget that was allotted to them? Because from our perspective, we had a hope for a bit more from a granting perspective from the federal government to begin with, way back, and it's a big 150th. It's kind of hard to give funds across all of the municipalities, but was there any discussion that you heard? And if not, don't worry, but we'll talk around the table on that.
Chair, speak to that then.
Oh, okay, then I'll save it for that.
Yeah, but just on that too, the ask, this is a one-time ask only. We will not be coming back because we are tying this to the Canada 150 celebrations. We were encouraged to come to the ad hoc committee because of an absence of a music event or a new event. So what better way to launch this as a Canada 150 and a legacy event? And that's really what we're pushing, this a legacy event for the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that additional information. Thank you. Thanks, Jay.
Councillor Humphries, just to answer your question, no, there was no discussion around that.
There was? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Abel.
Thanks, Jamie, for coming this evening. I think we'd all agree that you've done a great job with growing the Aurora Winter Blues Fest, and so certainly I think that I'm sure you'll do a great job with Music Aurora as well. The one question I have is really, as you stated, this is a relatively new entity. You just formally incorporated at the end of December, and now you're sort of launching. So I'll assume you don't really have any reserves. So you've presented a budget for this event. And I guess my question then to you is that, if the revenues aren't realized and you end up with a shortfall, how are you going to deal with that?
It's a good question, and we've addressed that at the board and the organizing committee. So it's all basically, I call it the balloon, right? You squeeze it based on what you have. So based on the budget that comes to the table through the sponsorship, again, this is all based on sponsorship. There is a small reserve that's come forward through the Winter Blues Festival that's gone into Music Aurora. No, we will base the programming, the size of that, based on the budgets, and like any business plan, we've got some key milestones to make those decisions. This month, we're really focused on the sponsorship side. The success we have is with Music Aurora, we've attracted some fairly large corporates who are interested on bookending both the Blues Festival and the Summer Festival together. So it's a bigger proposition to them, and a chance for them to kind of take title sponsorship as well. But that's why we're also working with the Chamber of Commerce. So we're rolling a package for the local business communities. Basically, it's all about giving back to the community, and what great opportunity then to leverage the Canada 150.
And I saw in the budget that you're either proposing or you've already secured a sponsorship of $25,000 and grants of $5,000, and certainly I think that's phenomenal if you've managed to acquire that already, and certainly encourage you to keep going. But I guess you've kind of answered the question with regards to there's always revenues that get realized on the day of the event, and so it's always hard to predict that. But essentially, the Winter Blues Fest has provided a small reserve to carry this in the short term.
The mandate to the makeup of forming Music Aurora was the two festivals would basically feed back into the reserves that we can then bring to the town the other live programming initiatives, but also to start uptaking, getting entrenched in the schools and other programs we want to do as well. But again, we're bringing a fund development individual who's very well respected in the province to help with some of the grant writing as well too.
Who's on the board?
Okay, the board is made up of 7 individuals. The executive is myself as president, Greg Smith as vice president. Secretary is my wife, Helen McDonald. We've got Stuart Stuart McLaren on the board. John Abel's on the board because of his passion with music in the community. And we've also just brought two additional, we brought a treasurer on board, and we also have Nancy Bodie, who's our fund development individual. We're also in discussions with a number of musicians, bringing them on board as special advisors, musician advisors to the board as well.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jamie, for the presentation. And I just wanted to sort of ask your thoughts on what you see as the opportunity for the town in celebrating in the 150 and what that opportunity presents.
As I mentioned earlier, we were actually encouraged to come and present to the ad hoc committee. I think there was an absence of a music event tied to the Canada 150. I realize, yes, there is the tattoo, and I think Shelley Ware has done a great job of coordinating that, and a valid point. We probably won't see another tattoo with just where we are in life cycles with our elders. But I think part of the mandate of Canada 150 was new events. So this is really a new event to augment other events. We've got a hugely successful, the Rib Fest, we've got the concert in the parks, we've got the hoedown, but I think there is a void in the middle of the summer. And if we look around us, other municipalities are picking that up. Again, I mentioned King. We've got Newmarket, very successful, the Newmarket Music Festival. Again, they've kind of rebranded, relocated, but
If there's no more questions, then all in favor of receipt and refer, please. Contrary? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jamie. Our last delegate is Javid Khan of the Aurora Chamber of Commerce and Ron Weiss of Sport Aurora. Tag team.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Javid Khan. I'm the chair of the Board of Directors for the Aurora Chamber of Commerce. I'm delighted to be here tonight. The Aurora Chamber of Commerce, as you know, is a non-for-profit organization whose mission is to not only represent over 600 business members, we also lead and serve over 1,400 and growing Aurora business community. Our goal is to build, drive, and positively influence Aurora's economic landscape. Recently, we were pleased to have Mr. Jamie McDonald visit our monthly Board of Directors meeting to speak about Music Aurora. We commend Mr. McDonald and Mr. Greg Smith on a tremendous endeavor they have embarked on that will, over time, bring 3 music festivals to Aurora and evolve to becoming a strong hub for local talent. We'd like to congratulate Music Aurora for hosting the very successful Aurora Winter Blues Festival back in January and February, and understand Music Aurora will host the York Simcoe Youth Music Festival and the Summer Music Festival. Why should a business consider investing in a music festival? From cultural to music festivals, these events form an important income stream for local business communities. These festivals will welcome the opportunity to market local businesses' products and services to local residents and other event goers, which would include folks who are coming into our community. With the growth of social media channels and a movement to pay-to-play environment, there is now additional avenues and revenue for exposure of the business community to target messages to a very specific target audience. And finally, as festival organizers incorporate big data, advanced customer profiles, attendee feedback, and aggressive analysis into their work, there can be potential opportunities to tailor events to even more closely match business brand messages with the target consumer's dynamics. For these simple reasons, the Aurora Chamber of Commerce welcomed the opportunity to help foster business partnerships and collaboration with Music Aurora to ensure the success of its endeavors for the benefit of the community at large. After Mr. McDonald's presentation to our board, it was evident the opportunity to collaborate with Music Aurora was a natural fit, as it has been a natural fit with our friends at Sport Aurora. The board vote was unanimous. As a result, the Aurora Chamber of Commerce is in favor of supporting Music Aurora and look forward to collaborating with organizers to find opportunities that will raise awareness of those businesses who would be interested in getting involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss.
Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm here to delegate on behalf of Music Aurora. The reason is simple for me. I've worked with this group for a number of months now. I'm not a board member, but I've helped them with a number of directions in forming their not-for-profit, and they in turn have been working with us in Activate Aurora. They're interested in working with us on open streets, and they've been very helpful in what they do. I know them as a group of highly skilled, motivated people that are committed to music, committed to entertainment, and as well as to this community. I have confidence in them. They're as individuals as well as volunteers who are able to do what they're proposing. The project they're proposing is not only good for music, but it's also good for the community at large and has the potential to grow into a significant event with residual legacy value, and it also involves local artists, which is also an important thing that needs to be remembered. Finally, as somebody who's worked with volunteers my whole life, I can appreciate the value of what they're proposing. Providing seed funding for such a group is the best investment a town can make, in my opinion. It results in launching a tourism opportunity while supporting volunteers who are providing incredible value. My appeal is not just for this volunteer-driven, not-for-profit organization, but for all those who donate their time and expertise to benefit Aurora. Please consider supporting those who make this community a better place to be. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss. First, may I have a motion to receive and refer to item R9? Councillor Humphries, thank you. Second, Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions for either Mr. Khan or Mr. Weiss? Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for Mr. Khan. So how is the Chamber supporting the music festival? Is it going to be man hours or a little bit of sponsorship? Can you extrapolate if there are any?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Councillor Kim. I think the first step for us, and this is sort of a phased approach, was first and foremost to understand what Music Aurora is about and have them come and present to the board so that the board understands what the organization is about. Second step is now to then generate the awareness of Music Aurora to our, as I mentioned, 1,400 and growing business community, because as Mr. McDonald alluded to, he has secured sponsorship of fairly large organizations, but there are organizations like our friends at Corned Beef Guys. There are other organizations, other businesses, the PETA folks, who perhaps we can participate and get them participating in the various festivals. So the next step is going to be evolve that into an awareness campaign and a conversation with our business community, perhaps at one of our networking breakfast luncheons, perhaps through our digital media communications, including our social media channels. And then from there, working with Music Aurora from a Chambers network perspective to help build sponsorship programs that are going to be a little bit more palatable for the, I'm going to say, tier 2, tier 3 type of business organizations. We don't have all the TDs in this community. We've got some cases 1 or 2 person businesses who may have an opportunity to perhaps support Music Aurora with a very small sponsorship opportunity. So that's kind of phase 3, and we're hoping that that will evolve very quickly so that when Mr. McDonald, Mr. Smith, and their committee put together these sponsorship programs, our specific focus is to help get Music Aurora and the smaller business communities together. The other part is also going to be working with Music Aurora, and just like we're starting to work with Sport Aurora, to really bring this together into one very specific program so that our business community is not being knocked on the door every 2 minutes by a very different organization asking for sponsorship money. Perhaps there's an opportunity to make it a little bit more effective and efficient. So that sort of is the plan of action moving forward. And we know there are businesses, and I regularly just literally drive and knock on doors, and I know there's a brand new Asian cuisine that's on St. John's. I walked in there like day one and chit-chatted, and they were very interested in the Chamber, not knowing the Chamber network, but they're also very interested in talking about how can we get involved in the community. So I know there are, as I said, tier 2 and 3 businesses, no disrespect to them, that I think Music Aurora and Sport Aurora together we can get their awareness and generate that economic development for them.
Councillor Kim? Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All in favor of receipt and refer then, please. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming up. I'm sorry? You can. Yeah, let's deal with consent first, please, and then we'll go on to the regular items, please. Thanks, Councillor Tom. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything on the consent agenda they would like to either have a quick question on that we can answer right now or pull it to the regular? Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, through you to Mr. Nadarozny. Doug, sometimes when we deal with tenders, we like to know whether or not we've had any past dealings with that company or operation. At one time, it was included in our reports. So with regards to C2, the award of tender for the closed-circuit television sewer inspection services, do you know if that's the same company we've used in the past or have used?
Mr. or go to Anka?
I'm not sure if... Yeah, we're not sure. We'd have to get back to you.
So perhaps just maybe an update for next week. And I just think going forward, I think that it's a nice piece of information to include when we're awarding a tender, especially when we're looking at small differentials in terms of the pricing. It's good to know whether or not they perform satisfactorily in the past.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anything else on the consent agendas? Councillor Kim?
C4?
Mm-hmm.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey. So this is the last year, the final year of the contract regarding Student Transportation of Canada, and so I'm wondering why the increase of $40,000 is coming in at this point. Was there an increase in costs at their end, or did we have a sudden increase in the population that requires a couple more vehicles? If you can explain, that'd be great.
Mr. Downey, please.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. The contract traditionally is around $30,000, and we're asking for a little more this year. We've added a couple of elements with regards to this year's contract that we haven't in the past. First of all, Labor Day is a week later, so we have another week of busing that we didn't have in previous years. We are also adding rainy day contingency to the costing. We're hoping that we don't spend that money. We hope it doesn't rain, but if it does, we have now got busing in place that we can pick up the camp staff and get them to a rainy day location.
Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I was more or less asking that $40,000 represents a fairly large increase in the budget. And it seems like a significant, to me, apart from rain days and the extra week, that is the total of the explanation at this time.
Mr. Downey? Hold on. Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those are the two major contributing factors to the increase. And as I say, there's a contingency that we placed in here that we're hoping we're not going to spend. So we are hoping to be closer to the $30,000 or $35,000 range as opposed to the $40,000 range. But we didn't want to come back to council with another report asking for additional funding in order to address that.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Nadarozny because this is part of our somewhat interesting purchasing system.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think to answer Councillor Abel's question, I think what he's asking is assuming that the increase is $40,000, but the actual increase year over year is only $7,000. This is just a third year, and because it pushes us over the $100,000, we're required to come back to council. So if they had just come in with a $37,000, it would be under the $100,000. We would have just simply renewed the contract. So this is just an anomaly with our purchasing bylaw. It's really only $7,000 more than last year's experience.
Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, and does this funding come out of is it required to come out of a contingency fund, or where is it funded from, this increase?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this item is already in the budget, so there's no increase in the budget. It's just an increase in the purchase order year over year, but the amount is in the budget.
And just my last question, what would be the overall revenues out of the camps that we are, like, I mean, the busing would automatically, in my mind, be factored into what the cost to participate, I mean, so.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, but I don't have the overall revenues generated through camps. But yes, busing is incorporated. This is a cost. This is a cost center for us. We actually make money on our camps, so this is a cost recovery, 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Abel.
Then I'm fully in support of the program and appreciate that. If it's not affecting any budget and we are making money, covering our cost and providing some some great activity for our residents and their children. So thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Just to add to that, when I first read the report, I was a little confused. I did reach out to Mr. Downey and talk, and I think a couple of things for council's information. One, it's in front of us because now the purchase order exceeds $100,000, which is our threshold that we set. And just in terms of the way it's allocated, we spent $30,000 in the first year of the contract, $30,000 in the second year of the contract, and now we're spending $40,000 or up to $40,000 in the third year of the contract. So I know for myself, when I first read it, I thought, geez, the whole contract's increasing by 40, but it's not. It's just a nominal amount over last year.
Councillor Thompson. Any other comments on consent? On the consent items, pardon me. In that case, may I have a motion to receive or accept the consent items? Pardon me, Councillors Humphreys and Tom. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Abel, I'll go back to you.
Mayor, just polling the chamber for items that we could bring forward, and I see one. If Mr. Mayor, if there's any other we could pull forward, but the Music Aurora item R9.
Is there a second, please? Bring R9 forward. Councillor Kim, thank you. Requires 2/3. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Any other items? Okay, Councillor Abel, do you want to put R9 on the floor then? I'm sorry? R2? Okay. Someone bring that forward. Councillors Tom and Humphreys, all in favor? Requires 2/3. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to R9. Someone put that on the floor, please. Councillor Abel.
Should I provide the direction, Mr. Mayor, or just put the item on? I would, the direction be that we provide the funding ask of $16,000.
Thank you. Excuse me. Speakers, please. Oh, I need a seconder. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Clerk. I need a seconder, please. Councillor Kim. Thank you. Speakers. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question would be, where would the source of funding come from? And if I could ask through you, Mr. Mayor, would it come from the same account as what was for Canada 150?
I go to Mr. Elliott, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Canada 150 events in the amount of $61,000 or $62,000 was funded from the tax rate stabilization reserve. And so I would suggest that if you were contemplating funding this event, it would be fall in the same source of funding, and it needs to be included in the recommendation, please.
Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Could add that on, if it would be included in the recommendation, the funding source?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Could you tell us the balance in that account, the funding source?
Mr. Elliott?
Don't touch anything. The tax rate stabilization reserve at the end of December has a balance of $4.3 million.
Thank you.
What was originally budgeted for Canada 150 was higher, but we took out part of that funding and put it into the Library Square. So can you give us, was it just $23,000 that was taken out originally? We had originally budgeted?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't got the figures handy, but I think it was somewhere in the $96,000 range, and it was reduced to 61, so it's about 25.
Councillor?
So, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I was just going to, I think we all appreciate the opportunity that exists here for us for a summer festival, and to tie it in to our celebrations for the year. We had originally budgeted more. We since put that budget down. There was some interest in other parties coming forward to put their ideas forward for 150, and Music Aurora did so. So really our budget could accommodate such an ask of $16,000, but for $16,000 I would think that this is an outstanding opportunity. I just recollect back to Family Day at the Arctic Adventure, where we had a very glorious day at Town Park, and we had just phenomenal activity with the children that were there and the families, and it was a great event that brought the east side to the west side into our historic cultural area. And this is a valuable something to learn, an opportunity to realize, because that's one of our challenges, and we say it every time that we talk about events. We want to bring the community as a whole, and music events typically are great events to unite your community. Also, if we think back to the Tragically Hip, a very similar event, all ages, everyone from all over. So when you think of family and something close to your heart like Tragically Hip, and then you think of Canada's 150th birthday, this is such an opportunity to bring those, that's one of our big criteria when we think of doing events, and that's bringing our community together. So I did want to emphasize that for the town to invest in that is a great uniting as well. On the economic values, we can see that a festival, as it grows, the impact it can have economically on the business community, bringing people into your stores and restaurants, and to see what we have, all the attractions that we can showcase here. Music orientated or not, the town will benefit from a more robust music sector, and the business of music contributes to the economy and brings revenue to other residents. It growing tourism creates an exciting and dynamic place to live. And the music sector in Toronto contributes $700 million in 2014, and I know they were going for $1 billion. So it is significant, but beyond the pure economics. And we heard our chamber president talk specifically about the great opportunity that exists here. Live music festivals are contributed to the positive social and cultural fabric of our town. And that's what I was talking about when you have such events. So it's a form of celebration with the power to build bridges and unite communities, and it adds a vibrancy and celebrates diversity, increases the livability. And we are celebrating this year Canada 150, and a music festival is a great way to do it and to bring tourism. The one item that I did want to bring to your attention is that the York Region Festival Alliance, which has been in existence for a number of years now, has put together something called the Canada 150 Festival Trail. And what it is the festivals in 3 regions all on one festival trail, and Aurora is the August 5th stop for that festival trail. And they are outreaching, they expect in the 25 festivals in Markham and all those, a total of 250,000 people and over 2 million hits on the media, whether it's on email flashes, etc. So there's a great chance that if we do well this year at a festival, we will have a legacy going for years to come that will benefit all the economy and celebrate and unite our community. So I'm I'm asking council to consider all those things, and the cost of $16,000 is something that we took away from the budget that was already budgeted and is in a reserve fund that has a $4.3 million balance. So the funding aspect shouldn't really be considering the opportunity that we have here. So, the bottom line, we in the town, in collaboration with our other governments, we would like to be able to, we have a responsibility to ensure that we have a vibrant and culturally rich town. And this is such an opportunity for all those reasons. Today's people, they're so involved in their cell phones, and they don't socialize like the way we used to. They text, they don't call or write notes, and they don't pop up at a friend's house, they Skype. So they're not touching each other. But live music festivals are increasing throughout North America, and one of the reasons is because there's that disassociative aspect of technology. While downloading may have zapped the music sales, it's only amplified people's desire to experience music close up and personal. And so this is a reason why music festivals are increasing and drawing a young, diverse, technical savvy crowd. So we have the opportunity to bring in visitors to us with the festival trail and with the celebration of our 150 and to unite our community. So there's great potential in the growth of music festivals. So those are just some of my points, and I think
Pardon me. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphreys, Thompson, Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Just a couple of questions. So I'm looking at the report submitted, and it looks like this was just presented to the team, to the committee yesterday. So just a couple of things. First of all, I'm looking at the Music Aurora events and all the partnerships that are already involved, and it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, and maybe I can get some clarification, that the organization has several partners, and I just wondered if this is already established or working on, or because it lists, it's an incredible, like obviously the Chamber, Sport Aurora, Activate Aurora for sure, but it also looks like they've got, media partners already engaged, and I heard Councillor Abel mention that the event is already scheduled on the Ontario Music Festivals list. So just a clarification on, under the air, it says the new music festival, the following community organizations and partners will be involved. Is that already done or in the works? Because it certainly is quite it's amazing. Probably the template is so well structured for the Blues Fest that this is already kind of a good template to follow for the Music Fest. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if I can get that answer.
It's Mr. Downey's report, so Mr.
Okay,
Downey,
Mr. Downey, if you can help me, sorry.
Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, my apologies, yeah.
Through you, I'm sorry, but I've had one meeting with Mr. McDonald and Mr. Smith, and they, although they list the partners, I wasn't sure which ones they've actually confirmed. I know that certainly you've had two step up this evening with their support. I know that they have had discussions with the Optimist Club, and I believe that the Rotary Club is going to be operating their beer garden. But I'm sorry, we haven't had discussions on any of the other partnerships.
Councillor?
Mayor, and I don't know if it's extremely time sensitive, but I wonder if there's an opportunity here. It was absolutely endorsed by the 150th committee, and I could see why they'd be absolutely. But I'm wondering if if maybe we can have a week or two where staff can sit down with the organizers, understand the full scope even more, because there's lots of things that needs to be done, and then come back with a report and officially state where we can get the funding from. and the impact for that, unless there's a time-sensitive issue, which I know that the Board of Directors can probably help us with here tonight, because, you know, it's absolutely an incredible event. I'm just looking at what the day is going to be like under the scope. You know, youth stage at noon, extreme sports zone, artisan zone, professional music stage in the evening with a headliner act, a festival lounge, a beer garden, and a food vendor fair. I mean, you know, this is a recipe for success. It's going to absolutely draw people. You know this sounds completely Aurora to me, and of course music brings people together. But I just wondered if there's an opportunity for staff to have a little bit of time to absorb this event and come back with sort of their perspective on this and how we can support the ask. It seems very quick for me, but that's just me, and I look forward to hearing from others around the table. But as it's also noted in here, which helps me feel that there isn't huge sense of urgency. Obviously it'll help for the organization in budgeting, that this event will be carried on regardless of the town's funding. So I appreciate that, and I know it's going to be success one way or the other, but I'd love for staff to have an opportunity to take a review.
Councillor Humphries, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson, pardon me.
Thank you. You know, listening to Councillor Abel, you can certainly understand and hear his passion for music and for this event, and it's no surprise that he's on the board for Music Aurora. I think he's been a long advocate for music strategy. And, you know, certainly, you know, the presentation by Mr. McDonald and all the work that he's done, I'm sure that they will have a successful event in August. You know, I had an opportunity last summer to go to the Aurora Music Festival at Highland Park, and I've attended other ones as well. You know, and I think they've done a great job in doing it. But when I look at this event and the 150th and sort of the history behind it, you know, we as a council originally wanted all of the 150 celebrations to be supported by grant funding. That was sort of an initial discussion. The grant funding didn't materialize to the level that we wanted it, but we did say that in the end that we would still set a budget and provide some funding to allow a number of initiatives to go forward. And I'm still of the opinion to maintain the budget as is. We've had a number of other people approach us about events that they'd like to connect to the 150th. One request is just from a facility perspective. They plan to do a dance party without any town funds at this point in time. Another one, the Mosaic Group, came, and they're looking for some funds. And I'm sure that, you know, if we were to award this amount, there may be other groups, the Cultural Center, the Historical Society, or other ones that say, listen, they'll do something else to enhance their offerings and tie it into the 150th. And so, you know, I have a concern about, you know, granting it to one and not others. To me, it's almost one of those all or nothing scenarios. And so I'm more comfortable just maintaining the budget as we had set previously, endorsing and supporting those town-run events that we had identified. And from what I've read in the report, I mean, the festival will go on regardless of the town funding. I think that they like to see this as a way to further enhance or build upon what they've already established. You know, I certainly wish them all luck, and I know for myself I'll personally be there, and I'll support them in whatever way I can personally. But in terms of the request, I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to Councillor Abel, I'm just wondering, given that he's on the board, is he able to sit here and discuss this as well? Given that he's...
Councillor Kim, that's a decision for Councillor Abel to make.
Okay, so it's not a clerk decision, or... And nope. I mean this out of respect for Councillor Abel, but I just want to make sure that our council's on side when we're making
that's entirely Councillor Abel's decision.
Okay. When I saw the report, I mean, I have some misgivings as well with respect to, the funding request. I know from knowing these individuals, it seems like almost every event that they touch, there's, you can't say that any one was not a success. So I applaud them for, their passion for music and festivals and uniting Aurora. But, when I see other residents come forward, with the Canadian Songbook on vinyl, which I'm really excited about. They were very excited and optimistic about raising funds on their own. And from what I understand, they're pretty close to or exceeding their budget expectations. And so I don't feel good about not supporting. We are supporting them from a town kind of facilities and other fees perspective, but from a funding perspective, we're not contributing anything there. And there were a lot of other activities when we were reviewing the Canada 150 committee recommendations, and there were quite a few that we turned down for budget reasons. Similar to Councillor Thompson, I just have reservations for saying yes to one and not the other. And so I would rather have us maybe in the next cycle review the overall budget that we're going to commit to, and use that budget to allocate to the events that we feel we want involved in the Canada 150 celebration. So I'm not prepared to make the decision at this point for this ask right now, but I would really like to have the Canada 150 budget brought back in the next GC cycle, and so that we can vote on an amount and then allocate it at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Am I on? Councillor Tall.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. And again, I appreciate all the work done by Music Aurora. I appreciate the the work they've done on the Winter Blues. I wasn't able to make it this year, but last year, and I mean, it's an amazing event. It's grown over the years, at least that I've been on council and been involved, and certainly a really great event in a time of year where you really need some music to pick you up. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that they're trying to grow into an organization that can add a summer music event and more events in the future. And I liked a lot of the conversations about collaborating with youth and the Chamber of Commerce and so forth. So everything is as good. I share the reservations of Councillor Thompson and Councillor Kim. We spoke a lot, I don't think it was last cycle, but the cycle before, about the budget for Canada 150. We reduced it. There was a lot of great ideas that came out of the committee that were basically not on the council agenda, I suppose, and we reduced the funding. And so I think for me, if the Canada 150 committee decides that this is something of significance to them and it's worthy of allocating funds of the budget they've already been given, then that's a conversation that they can recommend. But I think I'd like to stick to the budget that we've currently set. And I agree with Councillor Kim. I'd also like to see the context as well brought back to council in a bit more of a comprehensive fashion. I know that we had that one report. We made the decision to reduce the funding to $62,000, I think it was, or 60-odd thousand, I forget what the exact number was. So, I mean, maybe just for next week, even if we could just get an attachment to this report with respect to where we stand on the budgeting for Canada 150 and the breakdown of that 62,000. So for me, at the current time, I'm not in favor of the $16,000 ask as it is, but I am okay with partnering with community events, and so. I just had one question on the third line. It talks about the permit fee of $599, and in the event it talks about the permit fee being $1,500 and $1,599. So I mean, is it because we're not going to pay a $1,000 deposit to ourselves, and so that's why it's only $599? Okay, and certainly the request for communication assistance and utilizing some of our capabilities with respect to promoting the event and getting people out and stuff like that. I'm totally on board with that in terms of pitching in, and certainly a waiving of the permit fee would be something I'd be okay with. But at this point, I'm not in favor of the extra $16,000.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll do my best to apologize to everybody in advance. I think everybody's done their best to operate with politeness and decorum here this evening. And I will do my best to adhere to what everyone else has done so far tonight, but I'm not making any promises. Mr. Downey, I know that I normally, when I do have questions for you, I ask you those questions in advance just so that you're aware. So if you don't have the answers tonight, I understand, but maybe through an email or before next council meeting, you might be able to provide us with some additional information. Mr. Downey, through you, Mr. Mayor, when the Aurora Jazz Festival came to us, how much money did they request from us on an annual basis?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Mayor, my recollection is they got one-time funding for $5,000.
And in addition to that, they made additional requests for funding to council. They weren't approved, but it is my recollection that they did make some other financial asks. And again, Mr. Downey, I apologize. Is that a recollection of yours, or am I confounding the $5,000 request with itself?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Mayor, I'll stand to be corrected. Your mind starts going with age, right? So my recollection is they've only asked for money once and council gave them $5,000. I don't recall an ask for funding other than that.
If I may jump in, if I recall, that was actually split between waiver of permit fees for the park and a grant from the town.
Yeah, I believe there's only one request. I don't recall a yearly request for funding.
Split that way, as I recall.
So I do remember humming and hawing about the amount of money that was being requested of council for that event. And now we've got the $16,000 plus the $1,000 for the portion of the deposit, as well as the $599 for the permit as a total. I don't see a difference between these two requests and these two organizations, to be completely blunt. In the past, there was a criticism on us as a council as a whole that we got rid of that one music festival, and I had heard rumors around the town that some of the reasons were so that we could start our own. It was never my intent to start my own, but lo and behold, in front of us, there's another request for a music festival where we've come. One of our members of council has come asking for $16,000. They've worked behind the scenes with staff and asked that reports be brought and put onto agendas specifically for this evening. I'd hate to see, through an FOI, what else has been asked of staff and other communications that have gone on. To me, this is wrong, plain and simple. If I were to start an organization, whether it be a for-profit or not-for-profit, and work in my capacity as a councillor and leverage my capacity as a councillor to try and get funding put on the table for my organization, it's not something I would do. There are rules and strict rules around that. It's very different than any of us sitting on any committees, where we sit on those committees in our capacity as members of council. We're not starting organizations and then turning around and asking for funding for those organizations. I have a big problem with that, and I'm sorry to everyone around the table. I would have much rather seen this completely thrown out than brought on the table tonight. I'm just surprised that I'm the only one who really has this concern and who's willing to vocalize this concern here tonight, because I think it's wholeheartedly inappropriate for any of us to start an organization, to work on starting an organization, and then turn around and then work with staff to bring something forward, ask staff to bring reports to the agenda on a certain evening. I have a big issue with that. So I'm not in favor of the $16,000. I'm not in favor of receiving this report, and I'm not in favor of waiving any fees.
Thank you, Councillor Peary. My name doesn't come up on the list because of technical issues. A couple of points. First of all, I want to reprise the Canada 150 budget, the committee budget, which we came to council last fall. And requested the council put a placeholder in, as I recall, Mr. Elliott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, for about $94,000, I think, which included the tattoo, the fireworks, a water feature, and some other issues, which I'm sorry I can't remember. Council put that in, and then when we came through the actual, when the 150 committee came back with their requests to council, or their suggestions, pardon me, to council, council elected to remove a couple of the items. They came up with $62,000, which covered the fireworks, which is going to happen at the end of the year, military tattoo, and a couple of other smaller events. So that was the 150 budget. What happened then at the previous Canada 150 committee meeting, which was about a month ago, is that we had a few people come to us. The first one was Mr. Hurd and Mr. Watts with the Canadian Vinyl Dance Party, which the committee was very enthusiastic about, and there was no funding requested from those folks. Next up, I believe, was the Aurora Historical Society, and their ask was simply to be able to work with the town so we could both share communications channels to promote the 150 event. We then had Mosaics, the Canada Mosaic, which is a traveling art road show, and I'm probably not doing justice to the description, but there was some slots left for towns to participate and to create an 8x8 tile mosaic for costs of somewhere around $15,000 to $16,000, which would stay in the town, but part of the Canada 150 theme. And then a gentleman by the name of Mark Kolb came with an extension of, some of you may be familiar with the card game that he has, and then the Music Aurora came with their request for $16,000. At last night's meeting, essentially, we discussed mostly Mr. Downey's report on Aurora Music, but we still, the committee, Canada 150 committee, still endorses the other options. Now, the 150 is an ad hoc committee, and they're a committee that's recommending to council that we think that these would be interesting things or worthwhile things to add to the 150 celebration. As it is right now, council has already approved. So, Councillor Kim, if you want to come back and have a discussion on the Canada 150 budget, we can do that. That would be a reconsideration, but again, we can do that. So anything we ask would be over and above. So with that background, and probably taking too long to go over that, I have an issue with the fairness of supporting one over the others who have come. So the Canada 150 committee is also keen on those, so I'm not sure how we support the one and not the others. I don't think that's fair to the other people who have come. And I think we need to, one of the things we have to do is approach everything fairly, which is difficult to do. And I don't subscribe to the argument or the argument that because we have a lot of money in our tax reserve stabilization fund that we can, let's go spend it. That's not what it's there for. So I'm sorry, I can't buy that argument. I do have, I think the idea of the music festival is great. I'm not sure that this is where it should be funded from. It seems to me it's more like an economic development function than a Canada 150 function as such. Although there are certainly some tie-ins to the Canada 150 pillars, and we had that discussion last night. So I think we need to think through those ramifications before we go down that road. Because, quite frankly, if I was looking at doing something, I'd be at that podium next week, asking for some money to do that. So I think we need to be very careful with that. Second time around, I've got councillors at this point, Councillor Zabel and Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I make no apologies for sitting on the board of community events. I let Mr. Councillor Perry express his opinions. They weren't exactly flattering, but I'm just involved in the community, and there's no problem with that. Mr. Mayor, you and I were founding members on the Aurora Sport Hall of Fame, and they come and asked for money. So if I'm guilty as, or I don't know how to nicely say, but I don't think it was a compliment from Councillor Perry for participating in a great organization like Music Aurora, then you are just as much tarnished with the same brush for you and I being involved in the Aurora Sport Hall of Fame. I also sit on the board of the Senior Center, and there's funding that is brought forward before council to the tune, it's in the hundreds of thousands. I make no apology for that. Councillor Marakis sits on the the Volunteer Recognition Board with Councillor Humphreys, and they receive funding and had an ask for $10,000. I don't want to sully there in the same brush that Councillor Perry put me in. I did address that. There was a Supreme Court decision on councillors serving and sitting on non-for-profit. That was last term, that clearly defined the parameters of councillors making decisions for funding requests, and there is no conflict. I did send an email to all of you to that effect. So I was hoping that wouldn't be a reason for you not funding it, and it's unfortunate that that's what it's come to. I do have a passion for music. I have a passion for the community. I have a passion for the economic development. I think that when you see other people here standing before you, like Mr. Javed Khan and Mr. Weiss, they have the same passion for their community and what goes on. It's an opportunity to celebrate the funding. If you want to find a reason to not move forward and celebrate, fine, that's fine. I have no issue with that. I did start back in 2014 to put a little bit of money each year forward, and so that we wouldn't be sitting here debating, the merits of where the funding comes from. I do agree with Mayor Daw, your comment, this should be possibly considered coming from the economic development. Our cultural master plan speaks of investing in events as a way to stimulate. It's an absolute gift to our economic community of $16,000 to kickstart a legacy program that will last for years. But I'm just giving all the reasons why we should do it, and we have heard that we don't need the money, that it wasn't in the budget, that I shouldn't be here, it's inappropriate. Asking on behalf of this organization to have a celebration in our town park, I think it's a fabulous idea. I think what the other people brought forward is a fabulous idea too. I think the arts should be involved, and they came forward with a great idea, something that we can celebrate as a legacy. I think they should be granted that funding too. I would recommend that we up the budget by $40,000 and let everyone celebrate. I think we could have put in, like we did for the Aurora 2013, we could have put in $200,000. And that was my idea back in, and to have a really celebration, something that we could unite our community with, and something we could all be proud of as Canadians going forward. The same pride that we had with the Tragically Hip, it was a national treasure. In fact, there were 200 municipalities that bought into that last year. It was just a great treat. And Canada 150 is the same. I bet you there wasn't a councillor in Canada that voted against that. Well, with the exception of Councillor Perry. But everywhere, everyone enjoyed that celebration in our nation. So, not being involved in the community, I can see where you don't get it. You're not in favor of it. You want to insinuate that I'm doing something inappropriate. That's fine. You're about one vote. I would just say that we are making an effort to make a contribution to the well-being of our community, and it's a business community, and it's a community that needs to be united, and we're celebrating. And Councillor Thompson is exactly right. The show will go on regardless.
Okay, Councillor, time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I forgot what I put my, but I do have a question. I think. Okay, so just a couple of things. You see, from my perspective, they ask us $16,000 and the permit fee being waived, which I believe we decided on how to waive permit fees. There's a way to do the grant process. Again, my concern goes back to not at all holding, this committee ran. We really want a music fest, just like we want the dance. But it's a matter of, how do you open the door to all that? And we did make a commitment on the budget, and that was to stick. One of the things I thought is, and the reason I wanted to go back to staff is, does the committee and staff want to look at what has been rolled out and include, I don't know, this somewhere in between? I mean, it's their preview to do what they'd like to do with the budget that was assigned to them. And if this is in and something else is out, that's why I want staff to get involved again. I have absolutely no issue with this going back to staff if it's not a time constrained issue. As far as Councillor Abel mentioning, been on the board and us being on the board, that's a pecuniary interest is only called by the individual. If you don't feel there's one, then there's no concern. So that's fine. I don't think I heard that be called out straight out. For me, it's just, again, being fair to the other people other committees that came forward. And I do have a question. I remember now why I put my hand up. Did the other committees ask for funding at all through the ad hoc committee? Did the other groups that came forward, David Hurd is going to be putting on an amazing dance. I heard some other committees came forward. Did any of them ask for funding? Through you, Mr.
Okay, the Canadian Vinyl Dance Party did not. They asked for assistance from staff. Do I have that correct, Mr. Downey? Thank you. I'm sorry? And the venue. So that, okay. Which is the ACC one. The Aurora Historical Society did not. The art project did, although they didn't have a final budget number. Okay. It worked out to be somewhere around $15,000, $16,000, I think, by the time they looked at everything. The original ask was 12, but there was some extra costs, I think, that weren't originally included. And Mr. Cole was, there was a cost involved, although it wasn't fully defined, and then the Music Aurora. So yeah, 3 of the 5 who came forward did.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just so I'm clear, the ad hoc committee is making decisions on on how, in the budget that was given to them, what they're going to be. I don't know if it's to Mr. Downey, Mr. Mayor, like those, have we decided? Sorry, I'm going to ask these questions now. Did we allocate and go ahead and say yes to these groups? If you don't have that yet, that's fine. We can worry about that next week.
So maybe I'm not sure of the question. I thought I was, but maybe I'm not.
We have allocated the $62,000
to a
number of activities.
So that's under the committee's purview. It's so staff really aren't necessarily involved in whether we are in support or not support. That's why it was sent to the committee, and the committee is then charged with supporting or not supporting or recommending to council a particular direction.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Then that so here is an ask that's going above the current budget that was allocated to the committee. So that's why it's here, because we're being asked to increase the budget for the ad hoc committee for this event. And, we're going to be, that's why, again, I'd like it to go back to see what the impacts are. It does say there's tax stabilization reserve fund. I want to understand what the impact of that is, before I go ahead and approve that. In the meantime, this group is, exquisite in terms of music and hosting incredible events that are recognized throughout the GTA. I don't see them having to stop until they find out what we're going to do. I think they can move forward and then decide. That's my perspective, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I really wish we would have stuck to the conversations around the merits of the music festival. But I understand the concerns of some of my fellow councillors around the table, and I share it too, because it is gray. It is kind of muddy. I can only say that if it was myself, I would have stepped away from the table, because I do believe it's a pecuniary interest. By definition, a pecuniary interest really is the reasonable likelihood of a financial loss or gain. And that's where the difference is. Yes, we had a lively discussion last term, and we had information which was provided to us about sitting on boards, but it didn't relieve us of that conflict of interest that comes up when there is a possibility of a financial loss or gain. And that's where it is. It's a little gray. It's not clear. I mean, we've all sat in seminars. We've all been given lots of documentation around the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, what defines pecuniary interest, what are some of the case histories, and we're all aware of it, but it's not always crystal clear. And so what creates this confusion is that, we're all aware of that last summer that, Councillor Abel, established the Aurora Musical Festival and to the best of my knowledge, helped finance a portion of it. And so that's where that little bit of grayness comes in, because there is a financial implication with regards to going forward in this. And I think that, in all honesty, if it was me, I think that I would have stepped away from the table as we are required, so that really the focus could have just been about the event and the benefits and whether or not council wants finance, instead of getting into this conversation about whether or not it's a conflict of interest for Councillor Abel. Because it is true, it's up to him to decide it. But I do believe that there is a financial risk to Councillor Abel. If this event fails, for whatever reason, unforeseen circumstances, whatever, then like any business or organization, the board of directors would be responsible to cover that loss. And that's why I believe there's a conflict. But that's my opinion. But again, I'll go back to my decision to not fund the event has nothing to do with Councillor Abel's participation. It's really strictly based upon our decision to set a budget for the Canada 150th celebrations and to stick to that.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. And I'm not going to get way into discussions on whether certain members should recuse themselves over certain matters. I feel like, as been mentioned before, that's up to the individual members on any issue that we talk about at council, and it's their responsibility as a public official. So I won't wade into that. It also, like Councillor Thompson, didn't at all affect my decision. We set the budget for Canada 150, and as the mayor, I believe, alluded to, whether it was on his microphone or whether it was off, is that we'd have to reconsider the budget if we were going to change it. At this time, I'm not in favor of doing that. I also wonder whether or not this is even, going to be really part of the Canada 150 scope of work if it was approved, because the Canada 150 they have come up with events and created the events themselves. We've given them a budget, and they're presumably going to be working with staff to execute those events. This is a funding for a completely separate entity that's not really staff run. So although we could say the grant is channeled through Canada 150, I mean, that's kind of murky as well. I'm not in favor of it anyways, so I don't have to really elaborate further on that, but I just think it's a bit of a bizarre connection when it's really just a one-time grant from tax stabilization. And really, although they made a presentation to Canada 150 and it might be tied into celebrating Canada 150, I just think that's not really clear, not in the report. So I think for next week, whether it's by email or attach the public report on this, I just want to know if we have can we just get the current budget for Canada 150 and then the bevy of items that are being proposed? And then the last thing I'll say is on the permit waiver of $599 and helping with communications and stuff, the vinyl celebration that David Hurd brought forward as part of celebrating Canada 150, it has nothing to do with the committee, I don't believe. We're waiving permit fees for them and helping them out with the facility and helping promote the event. I think that's a perfect role for the town because, this is Canada's 150. We have a community group that's going to be celebrating our 150th, and if we can help them out and partner with them on, waiving the permit and helping them out with communications, I think that's absolutely something the town should be looking to do with groups, and I'd be happy to entertain from other groups if they're looking to celebrate Canada's 150, how we can help them achieve that. So I'm just not in favor of the additional $16,000, given that we did mark back considerably the budget for the 150 committee, and I just don't think it really fits in with their scope of work as it is now. So again, I'm not in favor of the $16,000, and I also would ask perhaps if we could just have the three items split so we could just vote on them separately. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to speak a little bit more about this and a little bit more about the history on the matter, I didn't feel comfortable with the Aurora Jazz Festival and giving them funding. I think my position is very consistent in that. And when those requests did come to us in the past, we did ask for a line-by-line accounting of where the funds went and to whom the funds went to. So I would actually put an amendment on the table that we have those same requirements put into place to know where the money's going and who it's being paid to. That, again, is consistency with what we had done in the past with other music festivals, and I don't see any reason to deviate from that. So that's my amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Is that an amendment, Councillor Perry?
So to clarify, to be eligible for funding, those are the requirements that I think we would be asking of them.
Okay. All right, I see no other speakers.
That was an amendment. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Is there a second for the amendment then? Councillor Thompson?
Just to be clear, it's only valid if council approves any funding. So should it not just be read that if approved, council requests the following? Or I just want to understand why you're inserting that.
Councillor Perry, sorry.
Again, for consistency reasons, I think it's important that if we had some rules and regulations with one music festival, we treat all applicants of music festivals the same way. And whether we move forward with the $16,000 or whether we move forward with just the $599, I think those same rules should still apply.
Is there a second for Councillor Perry's amendment? Councillor Thompson? Comments or questions on the amendment? Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a budget that has been presented. That was in one of the reports Mr. Downey reviewed. It would be suffice to show how the expenditures are paid for security, police, line by line. So I think it's kind of moot that you asked for it. And again, with Councillor Thompson, if it's not going to be voted in favor of, it's kind of redundant. So I won't be in support of it.
Councillor Tom.
I mean, I'm in favor of the concept if the $16,000 is approved. There is a budget, but it's on the seventh page of the report. But with respect to the permit fee waiver, that's really lost revenue. We're not allocating funds. It's really we're not going to be charging a permit fee. So there's whether you want to get into where they're going to spend where they would have, you know what I mean? Like it's a savings, it's not an investment by the town. We're just waiving the fee as we're doing with the other events. So I don't know how you get accounting on that, but I guess it's the awkward position. If the $16,000, which I'm not in support of, goes ahead, I'd be happy to have it looked at forensically, but I don't know.
Councillor Perry, then I'm going to call the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to clarify, budgets and all good and dandy, but as the JOC taught us, sometimes budgets change throughout the process. And I'm not looking to see how they're thinking they're going to be spending the money. I'm looking for an accounting afterwards to show how the money was spent. I think that should be completely open and transparent for everyone to be aware of. I can't see, and I don't understand why Councillor Abel would vote against this. But, regardless of where, if we're giving them funding, in the past, when a music festival has come to us, we've asked for an accounting, not just of the $599 that we'd be losing, but of the overall funding of where the money went. And I think moving forward, if this event does want to continue in some capacity, that'll be a document that would be invaluable to the organization as well. So there's absolutely no harm in having it produced and showing it to the town. I don't think it needs to be put out. Well, it probably could be put out on part of the public record, but ultimately I think it just makes sense that there's an accounting that we're made aware of. Again, it's the same way that we've treated other organizations in the past, and that's all I'm asking for. Nothing different. I'm asking that this organization be treated the same as we treated others.
Councillor Abel, second time on the amendment.
I didn't understand that the amendment was for a detailed after. So for a financial statement afterwards, I mean, I would be in favor of that too. That was asked before. It was just the word budget, so a budget I look at beforehand. So if it is written, and then that if I had seen it, I would have realized that, but I didn't. So yeah, I mean, there's no problem with providing a statement, a financial statement after. So I would be in favor of that. In fact, I would emphasize that it would be good business to do so, to have that. And I think any support we can give to any communities and is always appreciated. So in the spirit of working together, I think that's a reasonable request.
Calling the vote on, Councillor Tom, you had to press your button there, bud. Councillor Tom.
Just a clarification then, is this an amendment to line 2 or just an added 4, just 4? Because if that doesn't go forward, wouldn't it be kind of awkward to ask them for a financial statement if we're not giving them any money? Okay.
Calling the vote on Councillor Perry's amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to the main motion as amended. That's been requested to call separately. Voting on item 1, that the report be received. Excuse me. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 2, that the one-time event grant in the amount of $16,000 be provided to Music Aurora for its planned music event at Town Park on August the 5th, 2017, to be funded from the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve Fund. All in favor? Opposed? That fails. Item 3, that the permit fee be waived in the amount of $599. All in favor? Opposed? Item 4, can I ask you to read that? Item 4. Item 3 is the park fee. Oh, passed. Yeah, waiving the park fee? I'm sorry, okay, we'll call the park fee again. All in favor of waiving the park fee? Opposed? It's carried. Item 4.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So item 4 would be, and that accounting of the event be provided to council upon completion of the event.
All in favor? Opposed? It carries. And don't forget, we still vote on this at council. That finishes the item. May I have a motion to recess for 10 minutes, please? Somebody? Councillor Abel? Councillor Thompson? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 10-minute bio break, as per procedural bylaw. If we could resume, please. Have a motion to resume, please. Councillor Perry, Councillor Tom, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item up is the Joint Operations Summary Financial Report.
Do R1 already?
Well, no, we asked for R2 to be moved forward. Someone put that on the floor, please. Councillors Perry and Kim. Press your magic little button if anybody would like to speak to it, please. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to Mr. Elliott. Dan, we're not, just as a reminder, are we internally servicing this debt ourselves? Are we paying ourselves the interest? Or is it going to a credit union, is it not?
Mr. Elliott.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the debt on the JOC is externally financed through Infrastructure Ontario. And so it is cash payment out the door and interest payable every month.
Councillor?
So because we do have funds in the Hydro Reserve, have we ever looked at what would happen if we were to service it internally? If we'd be losing out, we would be losing out on our interest payments, but would that be made up through the interest payments that we would have been paying to Infrastructure Ontario? Like, is there a difference there? Is there an opportunity for us to make some positive cash flow?
Mr. Elliott?
I'd have to go back and look at my report, but when we first spoke about the financing options, internal financing was one of the options that was considered, and we ended up going to the X. I'd have to just refresh myself with all of that. I'd be happy to chat with you during the week if you wish.
Thank you. Councillor Tom, please.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I just have a question with respect to the cost required to complete the project but not in the budget. It's on page 13 of 25 on the report. I know we spoke to some of these previous committee meetings. It's almost $1.5 million, but a large portion of those, in fact, the bulk of it, I don't know what percentage it is, but it's almost $1.26 million, or so, I think, or $1.16 million is for asphalt. And it just says that it's previously deleted from the contract. So my question is, you know, I know that some of these items all of these items were either deleted from the contract or not completed, so that the project could be, quote, brought in on budget and on time. I think that was the word in the report. But I mean, the complete rear parking asphalt previously deleted, it's 2 layers, and the top coat asphalt previously deleted. So I just don't know how you have a completed building without asphalt. So what is it? Is the parking lots paved? Are they not paved? I mean, what can you explain those costs? Because it's the bulk of the extra added costs, and the rest of them are, only a couple $100,000. So I would just like some
I'll send
explanation
that to
on
Mr. Nader-Rosny. Wrong Nader-Rosny.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what happened was, at some point in the process, council was presented with the option of deleting or getting a credit from the contractor through a change order to delete the asphalt works to create capacity to finish the job within budget. Up until now, that number has been different. I don't remember what the number was, but in the credit that you were given, for example, was a lesser amount than that. In the interest of full disclosure, as we worked through this report, we decided that we would update it to reflect the actual costs, because when you take something out of a contract, you never get the full value. You can't expect to pay the exact same amount to get the work done to replace it. There's the mobilizing costs, all the advantages of being on the site and so on are lost. So we have done a pretty thorough review of the work that's required and priced it out as if we were, based on recent tender results, priced it out as if we were ordering it today as a separate contract. And so that's why those amounts are significant. This would probably be the first time that council has seen the complete top coat asphalt as a detail item. In the past, the stuff that I've reviewed was more general about asphalting, and most made reference to the rear yard, asphalting a rear yard with the appropriate credit. We've gone through the paper trail, and we are satisfied that we have received the appropriate credits for not putting the top coat on the part that is paved, and an appropriate credit for the work that was done in the back. Not done in the back. So we're confident that that paper trail is there, and what we've added in, though, is the real costs now of letting another contract. So there's a gap there that would be new to council at this point.
Councillor.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate the clarification on that. I mean, this has kind of been, an onion, and you start to peel back the layers. But yeah, I mean, those numbers just jumped out at me. I mean, there's obviously the totality of the extra charges jump out at me as a whole. But I mean, the bulk of the monies is with respect to asphalt and paving. And so, I guess my comment is that I'd like to get this project dealt with and finished. I think that it's kind of taking a little while to do that, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can get the feasibility or the necessity of each of these extra items, the added the cost required but not in budget items, are they still necessary to complete the project? And because I mean, just to take them out of the initial contract and then pay with them in future years is an interesting way to just delay the project's completion and go over budget. So, I mean, it's, I'd just like to know if at all any of these are necessary still, not necessary. If they are all necessary and that's why they're on the agenda or on this report, then that's fine too. But, like I said, $1 million in paving wasn't done. So I appreciate your input, and if you have any more comments to that, then that would be great.
Mr. Nader-Rosny.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the first 3 items on that list, council has subsequently taken care of. The completing of the greenhouse floor was completed using operating funds. The landscaping that is there is expected to be done with operating funds, mostly by our own staff, but operating budgets. And the fuel monitoring system, council also approved. Part of it was a little bit left, we thought was a little bit left in the project, and with an additional contribution. So those 3 items are done. The pylon sign, the conduits were put in, but it's really a case of whether you're satisfied. We've got just sort of frankly, a sign on a post right now. It's not very appealing, so one would suggest that we should probably spruce that up. Whether we have to spend absolutely $40,000 or not could be investigated further. The complete rear parking asphalt, that is the item that has been clear for some time as far as the stuff that I've seen. It predates me when that decision was made to not do the parking in the back. Again, as I said, well, so let me stick with that one first. A significant amount of that work would have to be done regardless. Whether you ultimately didn't asphalt it would be another issue, but even the base work wasn't completed there. So we've done our best to make the area usable by basically building some little roads so that the vehicles aren't in mud and so on, and we've used the space around it. It's not real pretty. You know, something could be done there to lessen that cost. We could look at just a gravel lot for that. It is just mostly storage. It's not for the fleet or anything like that. So there could be some adjustment. But based on what was originally anticipated, a proper building of the base and so on, and a full asphalt of 2 layers, that's what we believe that you'd be looking at in cost. And we would propose to put that in future capital budgets. The top coat of asphalt will need to be done. You can't run on one coat for very long, so that would absolutely come back in the next budget so that we maintain the integrity of the work that was done there. All of that work was, all of the proper work underneath that top coat, underneath that base coat was done as per spec, so there's no issue there. This ends up being a little more expensive than it would have been because, for example, when the decision was made to not put the top coat on, we spent some money building ramps into the doors and so on with asphalt, and so there's a bit of work that really gets taken away in order to facilitate the second coat of asphalt. So of the things that I've talked about so far, that's probably the one that absolutely has to be done to maintain the integrity of the asphalt that's there now for the long term. Furniture, we haven't fully filled it, so we could get by. That was putting furniture in all of the space that with the exception of the 3rd floor. And so there are some empty offices there that were anticipated to be furnished a little more completely, so there's some variance there. And I'm not sure what the, I think that's internal signage, the last item, the $8,000 item. I think that's the wayfinding within the building. The automated security gate was deleted before we even went to tender, but based on some occurrences we've already had with people wandering in at night and taking pictures of Salt Dome and things like that, I would suggest that would be something that staff will be recommending in the next capital budget to go ahead. In fact, we've already done some work on pricing that out, and we might even find a way to do it operationally because we see it as something important for the security of the site overall.
Councillor?
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate the added information.
Councillor, may I go to Mr. Downey?
Sure.
I apologize. I just wanted to make sure that in the fullness of all items that are outstanding, there are still some items within the report that have not been costed out, and those are identified on page 6 of 12. I just want to make sure that the council gets the full response to all outstanding items, and those are, we still have a staircase that comes from the greenhouse down to the south end of the parking lot that needs to be done. However, that has not been designed, and so we have not got a cost associated with that. And the dumpster area or our garbage bins also are not operational at the JOC, and so some work will need to be done there, and we have not got an estimate for that. Presently, we dump our garbage at our Machel Yard, and we would like to move out of the Machel Yard and move all those operations over to over to the JOC, and as it states in the report, we have not had a price identified to those yet. So council will be seeing those in future budgets, and we still haven't got an answer with regards to the topsoil that is at the rear of the JOC, and whether or not is it acceptable for planting by the Arboretum. So if there's additional work required there, then that will also be an additional budget consideration.
Councillor?
I think that's all the comments I have for now, and I appreciate the information from staff. I mean, I'll look over the report again to look at some of those items that you spoke about, Mr. Downey, and if I have any further questions between now and next week, I'll go either to Mr. Natarosny or to Mr. Downey in the interim. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I guess the one question I had, and it was raised by a resident earlier and stuff, really revolves around the task force we established to monitor the project. And I don't ever remember actually seeing minutes from the meeting. So I guess through you to, I guess as chair yourself, were minutes of the meetings kept and distributed to members of council?
No.
So, you know, I guess that's one of the learnings that comes out of it, because it actually was in the terms of reference that minutes were to be circulated to all members of council. And I have the terms of reference in front of me, so.
Disputing that.
But again, going back to it, I mean, we had a real concern over the overall management of the project because, and I can only speak for myself here, that it was, you know, the largest project we would have been exposed to, and all of us being relatively new, I think there was a concern about making sure that, you know, we stayed on top of the project. We wanted transparency. We wanted that communication to come out of it. And I think that's one of the failings, quite frankly, is that, you know, the point of that committee was to identify those emerging risks, to communicate that impact to members of council so that we can have an ongoing dialogue and conversation about it. And so, you know, for whatever reason, and we can get into it tonight if we want, but, you know, a lot of these things that are coming out in the report this evening, to me, should have come out of having that task force in place. That was the purpose of the task force, to identify some of these things. Now, you know, only yourself and Councillor Abel can actually speak to whether or not you were aware of all of these risks and they were brought to your attention, because obviously if you weren't made aware of them, then you can't report them back to council, and so that's a separate conversation. But, you know, that's the learnings that, for me, that's come out of this, is that we set up a task force to really, you know, help us manage this project and make sure that everybody was in the loop and aware of these things coming up, and it didn't happen. And that's the disappointment. And so going forward, you know, the next time we build a facility, somehow we have to relook at this model and make sure that, you know, council is becoming aware of it so that we can deal with it at the time rather than after the fact.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Just a quick comment, as Mr. Elliott said in his presentation, the minutes were essentially the reports. So the reports came to the task force before they came to council. And so, as an example, the paving on the back part that Councillor Tom identified at $800,000, that was probably about a year and a half ago, and that did come to council as a report. And so, would there be a better way to do it? I think that's patently obvious as to how we could have handled that. And I've got a couple of comments that I'll bring out later to speak to your points, because I think your points are very valid. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Elliott, when is the closing date for the Scanlon lands?
Mr. Elliott, please.
One parcel closed at the end of June 2016, the north portion, and that has closed and is on the public record, no longer owned by the town. And the south lot, we have a conditional sales agreement for it, but we have to clean it and monitor it for almost a year. So it's, I'm losing track. I think it may be late 17 when it may be available. It depends on what they find during that monitoring period, if there's more work to do.
Councillor?
2.5 to 2.9 million net proceeds, is that just for the north lot, or is that a combined estimate for the combined lots?
That, through you, Mr. Chair, that's a combined proceeds for both parcels. The first parcel closed with a net proceeds of $1 million. That's a public number. The conditional sales agreement has been dealt with council in closed session for the south lot, and it has not been brought out of closed session yet, so using a range, the combined estimate is of the two lots, 2.5 to 2.9.
Councillor.
You know, I think, I know we've dealt with the numbers quite a bit over the last year or so, and I wasn't really prepared to go much more in detail on that, but I was interested in what I call the look-back report. The last time this came to General Committee, and as I looked at the lessons learned, I was kind of surprised at how short it was. I mean, it's like the bibliography of a children's book. And I think when you have a project this size with the amount of money that was invested in it and all the other major projects that the town have had, and I'm sure they didn't all go smoothly, I would hope that in the future, it doesn't have to come back to council, but I would hope that we would prepare a proper lessons learned and have a full process in place. And it's not just a matter of improving project management. I think as I was reading, there was a lot of the final staff and the architect worked to value engineer. I mean, it seems to be a euphemism, but it seems to be a lack of accountability. And I think there needs to be accountability when there is a project this size. It's no, I call it also like one-man risk. If you have a fund company and you have one portfolio manager and everything's riding on that manager, should something happen to that person, he wants to overspend or leverage, or he happens to not exist anymore, there's a lot of risk. And I think there needs to be a lot of accountability, and certainly, council, we're here to provide some accountability and to ask questions. But, we do leverage staff for expertise. And it's no different from, if an investment advisor would come to you and to sell you a diverse portfolio of securities that guarantees diversity and maybe even say that it's going to guarantee 20% annualized returns, but then decide that there's insufficient assets to have a complete diverse portfolio, and then you start taking back certain asset classes. Well, we can do it. I'm sure I can convince someone to say that, to believe that I can give you a 20% return. We'll take out a little bit of equities. We'll even take out high yield bonds, and with some low duration fixed income, I'm sure we'll get to that 20%. And I think what I'm getting at is, if you're not an expert in that area, I'm sure you can be convinced of not asking the right questions, not knowing enough to react. And I think one of the things that we should be looking at is the accountability portion. And certainly, our Mr. CAO is, just got here recently and had a lot of things in transition. This project certainly started well before his arrival, and I think things in terms of the structure, accountability, and it's just astounding for me that what's the word, value engineering, and it really filtered through so many people, and I'm disappointed. And I think I was here for part of it as well, and I just hope that internally we have a firm analysis of how we can improve the process for all these major projects.
Councillor Humphreys.
Hi, to you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points of clarification. A lot of the things that I was going to say have been said. Just overall, how much over budget is the project based on the original scope of work? I'm a little confused. I'm sorry going back to that, but the scope of work was created, a budget was set, and I believe the budget was reduced. Just want to make sure I understand that. Is that correct?
I'll go to Mr.
Mr.
Elliott.
Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in the January of 2014 is when the final designs came in, and council was presented with a few options. There were several things. You could put this in, put this in, put this in. Do you want to put this in for the tender, make it as an optional or whatnot? And so we went through that exercise, and in my report, I think there's 3 or 4 things there that we chose to make as options, but we chose, then we went to tender. Then we got the optional prices back, and then we said, no, don't do those. So at the time of award, the scope was fairly clear as to what was in, what was not in. But it was not exhaustively detailed. Was there a floor in the greenhouse? And so on, okay? But at the time of council's decision as to what to put in the tender, what not to put in the tender, we established a budget at that point. When we went to construction tender, the bid came back within that previously approved budget. So from January to August, the budget did not change, and we proceeded on track.
Councillor, does that help?
I understand from the history and going back and forth. I guess when we're stating here that the overspending of 103,027, at this point, that's not all that we've overspent, right? Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just want to be really clear, and so I understand the impact of.
Yep, Mr. Nader Rossi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Dan will jump in here if I get this wrong, but right now, in addition to...
Give us a page reference.
Sorry, I'm on page 2 of 25. I'm looking at that chart, the cost to complete items removed from scope. So the cost to complete the items that are not in scope is the 1.493 million. That does not include the items that Mr. Downey identified earlier that have not been costed because we haven't done any of that work. Of that, some of it has already been done, and of that portion that's already been done, it's pushed the budget over $103,000. In addition to some other things that you've already advanced, you've already paid for, you've agreed to allow. So, you know, that's another way. You could draw this about 5 different ways, and we're trying to do it the simplest way, but I think if that helps you with the summing up of where we are. There's 1.4 that would, to the original tender specifications, we would have to spend 1.4 today now, additional, above the budget that you had. But some of that has already been dealt with. Okay. It's been covered in 2 ways. You've made some allowances, 3 ways, I'm sorry. You've made some contributions that you've raised your hand and said, yes, put that money in. Some of it we've covered operationally, and in the final analysis of all this, we have discovered that it's 103,000 overcommitted from the original budget. So,
good, thank you. Mr. Mayor, that does help because there's been so much back and forth, and you know, asking for more money, you know, and I think that has to do with some of the ways that we had the original budget and then revised it. So. At this point, overall, it's 103,072.27. Okay, that's good. That helps me out quite a bit. Just in terms of what remains, there's this, and there's some other items that Mr. Downey spoke about earlier, and that hasn't come before us just yet. Is there any way we can get? I mean, this is a fairly detailed report with all the angles. That we can get perhaps a list of everything's done, here's what we really need to complete and what that overall cost is. I think there's some information in here, or is it all here? It's all here? Okay. If it's all here, that's good. Is it on page 5 of 25? Is that all of it?
13 of 25, isn't it?
Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on page 13 of 25 are all the items that we have costed out that remain. Those bottom, with the exception of the top three, which are already done.
Okay.
The remaining items are what we expect it would cost to complete. And so the only thing that isn't in there are those three items that Mr. Downey identified. So we would have to go out and get, one of them hasn't even been designed, so we don't have a price for that. One of them, the soil issue hasn't been determined if that's even going to be an issue. We've been working to try and use the soil that's there, and hopefully that'll go away on its own. And the third issue will involve some construction costs because we don't have a proper dumping facility, but that'll be relatively minor compared to this. So.
Perfect. Thank you. That's perfect. I appreciate that, and thank you for your patience with me on this one. And just to the point that Mr. Gallo made earlier, it looks like the public art, and he reminded me of that. Is that something we can note and perhaps look at in the future of where we can get that funding and place it where there's lots of great projects, including Library Square, so I think we have an opportunity there for sure. I think that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is something that we've all been involved in, and I was on the task force. It was a very controversial item. I wanted to see it go through because I appreciated the joint of the efficiency and going forward. I would looked at the Newmarket Operations Center. They had environmental features like a green roof, geothermal heating and cooling, which is kind of cool, solar hot water heating, stormwater collection, ground-mounted solar panels, something that we could, be proud of going forward. Councillor Ballard asked for some oversight and asked for a task force, and I was very pleased to be on that task force with Mayor Daw. And, when I look back at it, the whole time I was there, the first thing I would ask is it on budget and is it on time? Because those were the critical milestones going forward. And I was always told at first, oh yes, we've used up a large portion of the contingency in the soil management. And I'm like, oh my, what impact does that have going forward? Because there's always, because it's all new equipment, it's a new build, it's not a retrofit, you're not going to find any surprises like mold or anything. We should be able to stay on budget. And we had these meetings, and there were sort of reports out there. I didn't realize that the minutes would have to be taken, and so I can appreciate that concern. Right from the word go there, it looks like we were failing at the oversight that we wanted to have there. While I thought my simple asking a question on budget on time was suffice for the oversight. But then the first time came up that we were cutting some things to remain on budget on time. And I started thinking, okay, that came out, and then I started reading some feedback from the community, and I came back and said, let's not do this, cut things to appear like we're on budget. And you know what? It's a mess. Even sort of parts of this, we're asking for clarification. We spent $100,000 over budget. Here are the items that we didn't do. Some of them have been done. The greenhouse floor, thank you, Mr. Downey, for pointing out that the garbage bins in the staircase aren't there. So it's still, I'm really losing it here. And I share some of the responsibility because it was my role, but and just being naive, that asking at the meeting, is it on budget on time, is not enough, and not being an expert in an engineering project of this scope and first time round. The only wind I caught, and when things started not being right for me, was, we won't do the paving, but everything will be okay. And I thought, well, how much is that? Well, that figure was, at that time, was $400,000. Well, now I'm looking at it's almost 1.2. Well, you didn't consider the top. And now, because we didn't pave, there's erosion and things going on. it's really not good. Not good. It's not good at all. I heard the other words I won't use, and I take some of the responsibility, but I thought I was just following what was being brought forth was forthcoming, and I had no reason to suspect anything otherwise. When a councillor asks a question, you get a response, you think it's a straightforward answer, and that's all I wanted to be was, straightforward, because that's what I want to be with the residents and going that way. And that's when I saw the ship sort of listing a bit. We went through the AFLC. That had big problems, over budget, way delayed time, lots of criticism. We had a task force going through. I just didn't want to have to go through that again. I know it's a challenge with municipal capital investments because we are bound by a tendering process which says that we have to take the lowest price. We are allowed to score in a technical aspect, and that is always challenging. And I think, and I've read that people that do these jobs know how to play that game with the add-ons, et cetera, et cetera. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. A couple of points. And to Councillor Thompson's question earlier, the lack of a second coat of paving on the front parking lot, we just found that out. And yes, that was quite a surprise, and not a happy surprise. I think probably one of the biggest mistakes we made, for want of a better term, is that we should have gone back and relooked at the budget when we ran into the soils issue. Because that did, and Councillor Abel has already mentioned it, that did chew up an exceptional percentage of our contingency. And I believe that if we had relooked at it at that point, that we would not be having this discussion now. So that certainly is a lesson learned. Overall, I still think that we made the right decision, and I think that we have a good facility. I think we've learned a lot of things. I'm not sure if we'll be able to put them to use again, because I'm not sure we'll have another project like this. And what I would ask Mr. Nader-Rosny to do between now and next week is some councillors may be familiar. We have access to York Region's audit services. They provide audit services, and we've used them. As a matter of fact, we used them on the Cultural Service Agreement back in 2011, I think, something like that. We brought them in, and they audited the agreement to see if it was in compliance. We have that capability, so I would ask Mr. Nader-Rosny between now and next week if he could check with either with the regional audit services to bring in, and maybe it's even a separate party, just to bring in a completely objective set of eyes, to make sure that it's all out there, that there's no question from anybody as to should this be in, should this not be in, how did this happen? Completely objective report. Not to say that our report is not, it just takes any potential perception of bias out of that. So if you could take that under advisement, sir, I would appreciate that. Thank you. For the second time, I've got Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because after I finished speaking, one of the things I think was really important is we're looking at lessons learned, and to do lessons learned, there has to be a very detailed review of the project from beginning to end. And through that lessons learned, you pick up all the details and the gaps and things that occurred. And, so for me, we were all part of this. We saw the reports every week, and I know there was a task force, but you were shown the same reports that we were, and we were provided these things, and made sense. A little frustrating back and forth, and we were not aware of projects being taken off and things being removed in order to meet the budget. And I don't see that as straightforward and something I ever want to see again. And that is, as we're not mind readers. We don't build these types of buildings. So very important that we understand from the auditor review what was actually done, where we really sit with outstanding work to be done, and what was actually completed properly as per the project. And then I would love, if it's possible, to do a really powerful recommendations. Here's our findings. Here's what we recommend to prevent, if we do it or not, of building of this scope or project of this scope in the future again, and really understand it. This is a very large undertaking for us as council and staff, and I believe there's a lot to be learned from this. And I appreciate Mr. Mayor for asking if we can get audit services to get a good view of this.
Councillor Thompson, just for our good, I need a motion to extend, please. Councillors Humphreys and Tom, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Just a couple quick points. Certainly, I would support an independent organization to take a look at it, so I'm fine with York Region doing it. And I also, one of your comments, just sort of triggered, while, I think we continue to talk about the process and some of the challenges in trying to be clear and transparent in terms of what transpired, I still support the construction of the JLC. At this point, I still believe that it was the right thing to do, and those decisions about putting it there and building that facility were the right thing to do, and I still support that fully. It's just a matter of just making sure that we learn from the process and go forward. Because while you may say there may not be another facility for us to do this with, I think there are people in the sports community that are hoping that there will be another facility sooner rather than later. But I guess my one question, though, really is about, we talk about trying to have the full history here, and if we're going to provide this to a third party, I don't know if there's any value in going back a little bit further, because for those of us that were on council last term, we know that where this started really is that there was a long-term plan for an operational center, but it really involved the old Hydro building and Scanlon Court, and that's where the initial plan is, and that's really where some of the budget challenges began, because the number that was in our capital project was really about retrofitting those spaces. And so when those no longer became an option, that's when we started looking for land. And so, I don't know if it's of value to add that to the background history, but I thought I would just add that.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take that under advisement. Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Councillor Tom, second time.
Thanks. And just not to belabor this report, but page 13 I referenced earlier, Councillor Downey, Mayor Downey, or Director Downey, I'm not sure, whatever you want. If Mr. Downey could add in the items on page 6 that he talked about, I know he said that their costs aren't available for those, but could we just get those added in and maybe put a TBD, just so, because 13 is showing the scope of the project and the added budget items are not included there. So I know we don't know the value, but at least we can show that those are in fact there. And again, maybe a bit clearer to those members of the public who are looking at page 13, maybe a clear indication of what we've paid out already. And, just to make it a bit more clear, this report was supposed to clear everything up, and
our incredibly efficient CAO has already made that note.
Fabuloso. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If there's no more comments or questions, then I'll call the vote on the motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Well, we're just whipping right along here. We got 2 items done. Item R1, the 10-year capital report. Would someone put that on the floor, please? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Kim, any comments or questions on this? This goes back to the start of the evening with Anka's report. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. In the interest of time, I'm just going to summarize the point. And I've had multiple conversations with staff over this. And for me, really just to put it in a nutshell, I want to understand why we've settled on 65 and whether or not that's the optimal number. And so, I've had plenty of conversations with our CAO as well as with ANCA as well, and they provided a wealth of information just to talk about that, because, when I see information from other municipalities with different numbers, I naturally wonder, well, what's the right number? And so I just want to see that justification or have further understanding about that 65 being the optimal number. Because at the end of the day, every year we spend millions of dollars on our roads, and it's a significant impact. And whether it's going to increase our cash to capital or have no impact on our cash to capital, there are all kinds of ramifications around it. So, in the interest of time, I'll continue to work with staff to satisfy my own concerns about whether or not that's the optimal number. But, I think it's important that council, understands what the impact of is 60 versus 65 or 65 versus 70.
I was just going to suggest, in the intro, if perhaps we could have just a quick memo next week, that would be a great help. Thank you very much. If there's no more comments or questions, then all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. We've done 2. Item 3, proposed change to regional property tax ratios. Someone put that on the floor, please. Councillor Perry, thank you. Second. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, I appreciate the report, full of tons of great information. My question to you, though, how will this affect the average taxpayer who lives in a house, depending on which way the region ultimately goes? You've given a great breakdown about what happens if an $800,000 home goes up to $1 million home, but to the average homeowner, let's say they have a house that's worth $700,000 on assessment. How is this going to affect them?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I draw your attention to page 5 and page 6 of my report are the 2 options that are being considered. The status quo in the top left corner of the chart shows that Aurora, in a status quo environment, has $471,000 added to the residential class of the regional share. If we did that, that increases a $700,000 home. Their current tax bill is about $6,400. It would add $33 to it, about 0.5%. If we flip the page, we see that in that scenario of revenue neutral, which is what I'm recommending, we see $791,000 coming off of the residential class here in Aurora in respect of the regional share. And that translates to $55 less than they paid last year, about 0.85%.
So then, roughly speaking, on a $700,000 home, we're talking about an $88 swing, depending on one way or the other. Okay. I appreciate the recommendation that we have in front of us. I think it serves our residents better. Mr. Mayor, make sure you push really hard at the region. Thank you.
Councillor Perry, this actually comes next week to Committee of the Whole, and then the week after at Council, so we'll do our best. Any other comments or questions on this item? All in favor then? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Item R4, results of tax sales held April the 23rd, 2015. Someone put this on the floor, please. Councillor Tom, thank you. Second, Councillor Kim. Any comments or questions on this? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. And 3 to Mr. Downey. Just out of curiosity, Mr. Downey, was there any consideration to maybe using this land as a trail connector? Because you have some other properties around it that might or might not get developed. Is there any value in doing that as opposed to selling it as remnants to those properties that connect to it?
Mr. Downey?
Yeah, I know where we are.
There's nothing there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we hadn't given it any consideration. So it's something we could give some consideration to if Council asked us to, but no, we hadn't given it any consideration. When we first looked at this, I thought it was part of the actual hydro corridor, but I find that it's adjacent to the hydro corridor. So it does have a potential, but we haven't looked at it as a trail connection, no.
Councillor Perry?
So being familiar with the properties themselves, I've we used to have friends of the family who live back there. Those sites are not conducive to trail without putting in some very heavy-duty wooden trails. It's marshland.
Calling the vote then, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item R5, Council Chambers and Holland Room Use Policy. Who would like to put that on the floor for me? Councilors Tom and Peary. Comments or questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Abel, pardon me.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So I haven't read through this, but are we restricting use to the Holland Room strictly for committee meetings and staff meetings? Is that what I'm understanding through you, Mr. Mayor?
Is that true, Ms. Van Loon? Ms. Van Loon?
Yep. Through you, Mr. Chair. It will be available to other user groups at a fee, and if staff resources for technical requirements are required, then there will be a fee associated with that as well. So first come would be advisory committees, internal staff, and then external user groups at a fee.
Councillor?
The other rooms that we have, and I'll use the less scanned as an example, is there a fee for that? Isn't there a fee for all of them?
Mr. Downey?
To you, Mr. Chair, the Lexan room is available free of charge to community groups. Actually, when Town Hall was opened, that was the request of council that those rooms be available for sports groups or community groups at no fee. We do have a fee structure for those rooms, but they're predominantly booked by user groups, community groups. I apologize.
Councillor?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking through and I don't see a fee charged for the Holland Room, and perhaps it's better that I call you and understand that. And I don't know if it's being restrictive for a reason, or maybe restrictive isn't the word.
Councillor Peary, please. Councillor Abel.
I was just going to make a comment. I would just like to, when I call, to understand the reasoning going forward, so when we talk about it at council. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nader Rosny?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can add a quick clarification on that. The hourly rate is $75 an hour. It's based on a cost recovery for staff, because if they need technical support there, we have to provide that. But if they don't need it, then there wouldn't be a charge. Right?
Thank you, Mr.
I'm getting a dirty look now, so I might have... No, not for you. No, from the clerk. I might have got some fact wrong there. I thought that it says that a cost recovery for staffing. So if we have staff there, there's a 3-hour charge at $75 an hour for any of the rooms that... But I'm not sure if... I thought there was a way to, if the equipment wasn't in use...
Ms. Van Loon?
Oh, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the fee that the CAO is referring to is the staff fee in addition to the room rental fee. So the room rental fee is identified in the policy, that is the Parks and Recreation policy for room bookings. This $75 fee would be charged in addition to that if staffing was required in order to operate that technology.
Thank you. We all clear? Any other speakers, please? All in favor, then? Opposed? That's carried. Item R6. Thank you, Councillor Perry. Second, Councillor Humphreys, thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I guess through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. I guess the only question I have is that we're going to charge a fee for people to be on this list. And I guess my question really is, if it's to the town's best interest to keep a record of this, and we want people to participate, why would we be charging a fee? Why wouldn't we just encourage them to do it and not charge that fee?
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, it's to offset the cost of administering the program. So this will require an application. It will require review of documentation to validate. It may require inspections. So our bylaw officers will be attending the site. So it's to recover the costs of that effort.
Councillor?
And I understand that we're looking at it from a cost recovery. I just think that, you know, then we might have challenges with people not really wanting to participate in it, and then we're enforcing this bylaw as well. And so that was my only comment when I first read it. That just sort of stood out to me with regards to the cost of enforcement or participation.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mayor Daw. And forgive me if it's in the report, perhaps if it is, just point to which section, but Councillor Thompson just mentioned enforcement. I mean, a bylaw, you know, having a fee to have someone register with the town that has a vacant property, especially if it's 90 days. If they don't register their vacant property, you mentioned in the report that Hamilton has a robust vacant property registry bylaw, and if bylaw staff confirm a building is vacant and is not registered, they add it to the list and begin enforcement. So would you suspect that our enforcement efforts would mirror that of Hamilton's? Or, I mean, laws only matter if they're enforced. And so it's nice to pass a bylaw on vacant properties, but I think the enforcement piece is pretty important. So if you could just comment on that, what your plans are, what your thoughts are. And obviously, I'm not sure if you include that kind of stuff in a bylaw, but perhaps just enlighten us a little bit on that.
Ms. Sandlin?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Our enforcement efforts would be similar. So if we become aware of a vacant building that would be required to be registered, we would commence with enforcement efforts. Typically, a bylaw includes some provisions around penalties and fines that may apply. For example, our building bylaw has an administrative fee now whereby if a building is started without, construction is started without a permit, that there's an administration fee attached to the enforcement piece of that. So we could write some very similar language into the bylaw, and most of the registry bylaws do have that language.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, and perhaps we can have a further discussion during the week, but I just think that the enforcement is extremely important on this, obviously, so, but those answer my questions as of now. Thank you.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, is this just for commercial buildings, not residential?
Ms. Sandlin?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're looking at both, but they are slightly different in nature. So we haven't really, we need to work through the details of the bylaw at this point in time. I do believe that residential is slightly different from commercial, and perhaps there is some thought to exemptions of some single-family dwellings, because some people may travel south in the winter and their building may be vacant for longer than 90 days. So there's, we need to provide consideration to those types of issues.
Councillor?
Is this report commercial only and not residential?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as I said, we're still working through the details of the bylaw. We need to draft the bylaw, do a little bit more research. It will for certain apply to commercial buildings and industrial buildings, and perhaps slightly different provisions within the bylaw for residential buildings.
To the Hamilton and success that they had there, is theirs commercial and residential?
Ms. Sandlin?
I believe it is. One of the bylaws that we looked at has an exemption for buildings containing 1 and 2 dwelling units. Others had exemptions for seasonal properties. So the bylaws that are in place now in other municipalities have varying provisions within them.
Councillor?
got my answer. The reason I bring it up, and this is a comment, that there is a lot of concern about this properties, residential, that are being bought and assumed to be foreign investment. We're realizing that they sit empty often. Some of them are leased, and that's fine, but some of them just sit empty, and there is concern about the impact that has on housing and property standards, etc. And some municipalities, and I'm thinking of Vancouver, are addressing that under some sort of vacant. So I'm just thinking that there might be a little more robust. Certainly I appreciate the comment about the snowbirds, but I'm just thinking maybe we should make those different and address both of them at the same time if there's similarities in the bylaw and enforcement and what the staff do to go and look at it to make sure it's not deteriorating. That's my comment going forward on this. Thank you.
Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much like Councillor Abel, I started thinking about vacant homes, and I think it's great if we can take a look at that policy and see if we can look at both residential and commercial. I don't think it would hurt. Probably a lot more to it. Just a quick question. So the fees are yearly, so we'd have to. How long? I know the question. How long would a building have to be vacant? Just a question. I mean,
Ms. Van Lien?
To clarify the question, before the registration requirement kicks in, we're recommending 90 days, which, yes, 90 days.
That's perfect. And we have a lot of great bylaws today that are existing in terms of property standards. We have them, enhanced property standards for heritage type buildings. We have property standards in general that help, keep our commercial and residential buildings in good shape. I see this as a good addition to that for sure, because it's twofold. Not always a vacant building that is not looking good on the outside for sure. So I think this is going to be a good bylaw to add for sure. I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to this being implemented for sure. And I have something that I was going to put in a new business, but it lines up just with this, because there's one property, I know Ms. Van Lien will know what I'm talking about, that I'm really getting worried about, that is empty and it's been there for a while, and so I think this will be really good to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor, please. Opposed? That is carried. Item R7, the 2018 Town of Aurora Budget Work Plan. This is where Mr. Elliott works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Councillor Thompson's moving it. Second, please. Councillor Tom, thank you. Any comments or questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary? You didn't want a life, did you, Mr. Elliott? I'm sorry. Well, who would like to provide direction? Mr. Elliott, help us through this part if you would. I'll go to Mr. Elliott first, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With no disregard or disrespect to those that were presenting tonight, we had 3 delegations on the same request tonight. And so the direction that I'm seeking is on page 4 of 6, where we're trying to bring forward we heard from members of council that we need to control these pop-up requests for funding that occur mid-year outside of the budget process. And so we're suggesting a couple of things. If it's less than $2,000, let them come. If it's more than $2,000, perhaps option 2 is, if it's more than $2,000, perhaps they need some support of a couple of members of council before they even get on the agenda to appear. And to alleviate the situation where the same request gets bombarded from multiple delegations, we simply say, one request, one delegation. Now, we would permit an opposing delegation, I suppose. We don't get that too often, but that's the third option as well. And we believe that these kinds of frameworks might bring greater accountability and some pre-filtering to the larger requests.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I was speaking offline with some other councillors during our break, and I think, you know, we've spoken to this before of last-minute budget requests, of one-year grants, and all sorts of different funding methods that we've kind of doled out to various groups. And I really think that we need, I mean, I like that there's options here, and I read through them. In my opinion, I think it would be nice to get a separate report that deals directly with this issue. I'm not saying the options that were presented aren't good, but I mean, there might be best practices of other municipalities. I just think that this issue takes a little bit more, I think needs a bit more time and interest from council than this would suggest. So, you know, I don't know if it's possible to refer this item back to staff for a report at a later time that deals specifically with funding from community groups or third-party groups, or however you want to define them, and what the strategy is, because I think that it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and I just would like to see perhaps more options than what we've been given tonight. And I think there are more options than these three, so I guess I'd make a motion to refer the third item on this to staff for a report, a separate report.
Well, I was going to make a comment and ask Councillor Thompson to comment, and I know that our CAO would like to.
I can wait then.
Well, it's just that at the Finance Advisory Committee, the CAO did bring forward a suggestion as a process to handle this, and I don't know, Councillor Thompson, if you have any comment at this point, or.
Well, I actually, you know, support Councillor Tom's, you know, idea, because I do think it gets more complex. You know, I like option 2 in the sense that you're asking a councillor to sponsor the request, and I've seen that done elsewhere, and so I think that's a start. But it does get more complicated than that. And it would be good to have I guess a little bit more details or a policy around that as well, because as we've seen, we've had some challenges this term, and I think that you know, I know we tried to tackle this last term with a sponsorship policy, and it had some challenges, but I would support Councillor Tom's idea of let's refer it back to staff, try and get a little bit more detail around that process than just the options, because they're simplistic, you know, and they'll bring people forward, but at the same time, I don't think it's addressing all of the concerns that we're seeing this term.
Mr. Ned Rossi?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to clarify, there's no problem with us obviously coming back with more detail on the third element of the recommendation. I would just want to clarify that the proposed budget work plan, one element of it is this public input session, where we would hope that that we would try to channel all of the requests through that. I mean, but recognizing that that's not realistic to expect everybody to be aligned on a certain date to come and ask for money in 2018, that the report would deal with those ones that that don't fit that model. But we're hoping that by passing number 2, that you're also acknowledging that you have no problem with that budget input session, and as a council that you would try to channel those requests to that kind of a forum rather than continue to have them ad hoc throughout the year. So I just want to make that clarification, and then we could come back with how to deal with those exceptions.
Councillor Tom?
I appreciate that, and so again, that's why I think I just wanted a bit more detail and refer this back, because the other thing is, you know, we're dealing with the requests on this, but I mean, it's possible that council could set a budget for grants for community groups, and there could be a mechanism by which you could apply that's takes it out of asking a councillor for support to have it put on an agenda, and it makes it a bit more arm's length. You ask for, you know, there's some criteria associated with it, et cetera, et cetera. So that could be the kind of one option or another option, but the options, I mean, I'd like staff to bring back some options, and that's the intent. So I can wait till other councillors make first comments, or I could make the motion to refer.
Why don't you put the motion to refer that
I'll
item
put the
back?
motion to refer line 3 back to staff for a separate report.
Councillor Thompson seconding. Comments or questions on the motion, on the amendment, pardon me, or the referral of clause 3? Councillor Perry, Councillor Abel.
So just on the referral, I know that Dan and I have had conversations about participatory budgeting in the past. This would be an excellent mechanism so that to ensure that there's also community buy-in prior to it even coming to council. So,
thank you, Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mayor Daw, and I'm just going to ask that there be some sort of consideration given to the cultural, the Parks and Rec cultural master plan, as well as the music strategy, and other municipalities that have adopted a participatory sort of environment for community groups to partner with the town. And you don't want to appear that you're trying to be restrictive. In fact, it speaks exactly to, in both those strategy master plans, that the town minimize and streamline those community partners coming forward. I'd also like to see in the referral a capsulation of maybe the last couple of years of what we have done with our community partners, to get a scope of the idea of how much money and how much we're talking about. It does tie in often with the grant that we allow. I think Mr. Downey's department has some $20,000 a year, maybe it's more, for people that come asking for funding grants, no more than $1,000, excuse me, no more than 2 out of 3 years or something along those lines, so that they don't become a core funder. That actually tries to encourage our partners to come forward. So I would like to see if we could fit all that in to the spirit of what is being asked here, rather than trying to restrict that involvement. And I'd also like to know sort of the metrics. How many people are coming forward? Are we talking about 4 times a year? Are we talking 150 times a year? I know when people ask for waiver of fees, we often ask them to get a grant, and then they pay the fee, so the money changes hands. So if that could be included in the background, I'd appreciate it. I don't know if I have to formally amend that, Mr. Mayor, or whether the...
I see Mr. Elliott taking notes.
Is that fine? That's good. That'd be great. I think it's pertinent to the report coming back.
If there's no more comments, just on the referral, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Before we move on, I need another motion to extend. Requires 2/3.
How long?
I would like to see us finished. 20 minutes.
That's good. That helps.
Mover and a seconder, please. Councillors Tom and Kim, all in favor? Requires 2/3. Contrary? Carried. Back to the main motion as amended then. So back to the main motion. If there's no further comments or questions, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 8. Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Thompson seconding. It's the property use agreement, St. Andrews College soccer fields. Any comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, calling the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Well, we might not need the 20 minutes. Last item is R10. We're moving too quickly for you now, aren't we, Linda? R10, excerpts from the CYFS meeting. Someone put that on the floor, please. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Tom, second. Any comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That does finish the items. Now, we got new business. Councillor Peary? None, I see. Councillor Kim? Councillor Tom? Councillor Humphreys? Councillor Abel? Councillor Thompson? New business, sir. None from me. No closed session. That motion to adjourn. Councillor Tom, Councillor Kim, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, staff.